get into, oh, let's do some housekeeping.
You want me to do the Zoom housekeeping now?
Yes, please, Kim.
Okay,
Thank
hold on a
you.
second. Welcome committee members, liaisons, and members of the public to the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission meeting. Thank you for joining us. We are using Zoom with the goal to foster a more inclusive environment and effective meeting. If you would like to comment during the meeting, please use the raise hand feature. Please utilize this tool to virtually indicate that you would like to speak in order to help the chair facilitate the meeting. A friendly reminder that this is a video conference meeting, and please be aware of the surroundings behind you. All Legal Services Trust Fund Commission meetings and committee meetings will be recorded and posted to the State Bar's website. Zoom captioning is available. To enable, select live transcript at the bottom of your Zoom screen and then select enable transcript. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Thanks, Kim. Okay, why don't we do roll call just so we know where we're at.
Connolly,
Present.
Al-Saraf,
Present.
Alakani, Ball,
Here.
Blakemore,
Here.
Campbell, Escobita, Galkin,
Here.
Gonzalez,
Here.
Huang,
Here.
Iskin, King,
Here.
Klein, Cruz, Lee, Mahoney,
Here.
Milrod,
Here.
Morales,
Here.
Pryor,
Here.
Danville,
Here.
Vargas. You know, I thought you said Xavier was here, but maybe. Justice Rodriguez,
Here.
Judge Seligman,
Here.
Judge Yang. We have quorum. We have 13 voting members and 2 non-voting members here, and I'll do our liaisons. Selena, I saw you, Selena, and Melanie's here. And Laura's absent.
Laura's
today.
off today.
Okay, great.
And Jacqueline joined.
And I don't know if you saw, but Jacqueline joined, Dawn.
Oh, okay. Oh, great. Thank you. Okay,
Yeah.
so we have quorum. The staff are here, and I'll turn it back to you, Erica.
Okay, great. So one thing I wanted to just say at the outset is just a reminder, if you haven't done your Form 700, which is your financial disclosures, please make sure that you get those submitted. They are due Monday.
Mhm.
Monday. And if you don't get them in time, you can be subject to fines by the bar and by the Fair Political Practices Commission. So highly recommend you get those done. If you have questions, please feel free to reach out to staff and they can sort of help you or like direct you to Raul or Brady. So just a reminder on that. I think a lot of people have them in, but in case it's slipped through, just make sure you get that done.
I think we only have 3 outstanding, and the staff has been trying to reach out. So if you need technical assistance, please do reach out. Just drop me, Raul, or Brady an email, and we'll get you that help that you need. It should be fairly quick to fill out, and hopefully won't be too much a burden. And just the fee, the assessment is not from the State Bar. It's another entity that assesses that.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Yes, I apologize.
No
My
problem.
agency, we get billed ourselves
Oh,
directly
okay.
from them and from the FPCCC
Oh, okay.
or FPPPC. Anyway, okay, sorry, not from the bar, from the Fair Political Practices Commission. Okay, the next thing I want to do is let's take public comment, and we're a jam-packed meeting today, so I'm going to limit you to 3 minutes, and if there is comment.
I don't see
Excuse me.
anybody's hands raised.
Yeah, no one has their hands raised.
Okay, great. Let's move forward. So first I'd like to go through the consent calendar. Those are the things on agenda item 3. So as a reminder, consent calendar means that we, instead of in lieu of doing full discussions on these, we will just vote to approve them all together. If anyone believes that something on the consent calendar warrants discussion, they are welcome to ask to take it off and have discussion on it. So before we do that, let me just see, is there any matters on the consent calendar that folks believe we should discuss? Okay. Seeing no hands raised, if I could get a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So move.
Thanks, Patience. A second?
Second.
Who's that?
Jonathan, second.
Oh, thanks, Jonathan. Sometimes I can't track who's talking and who came off mute. Great. All right, let's take a vote.
Okay, great. Alakani?
Yes.
Thank you. Ball?
Yes.
Blakemore?
Yes.
Campbell? Escobedo? Galkin?
Yes.
Gonzalez?
Yes.
Huang?
Yes.
Iskin? King?
Yes.
Klein? Cruz? Lee? Mahoney?
Yes.
Milrod?
Yes.
Morales?
Yes.
Pryor?
Yes.
Stanville?
Yes.
Vargas? Al-Saraf?
Yes.
Connolly?
Yes.
14 yeses, 0 nos, motion passes.
Great. And let me just say a big thank you to the committees who did the work that is on the consent calendar. I know a lot of times when it's not on the consent calendar, we don't have the discussion. I want to make sure you understand, very appreciative, and thank you very much for doing that. And it's good work for that. And thank you to the staff as well who helped support the committees on that. All right, now we're going to turn to agenda item 4. And 4.1 in particular on our grants administration. This first one is about the 2023 carryover and budget revision requests with regard to California Women's Law Center and Coalition of California Welfare Rights Organization. I'm going to turn this over to Danielle, Angela, and Catherine to discuss with us. Oh, and sorry, Danielle, let me just also preface, again, because this is a pretty jam-packed one, I'm going to kind of keep us moving along. So just an FYI, but appreciate you guys making the presentation so we can discuss. Thank you.
Yes, feel free to move us right along. Great. Okay, so let me share my screen. Perfect. And the agenda item is related to 2 grantees, but we've kind of chunked out the presentation to talk about them separately because they are pretty substantively different. So the first we will talk about is California Women's Law Center's 2023 EAF carryover request. This will be pretty brief. Want to give you an overview of what this updated carryover request looks like, and then a proposed resolution for your consideration. So California Women's Law Center's 2023 EAF grant award was about $225,000. Originally, they submitted a timely EAF carryover request, but that original request was for 100% of their grant award amount. And after some discussion and review of the materials submitted in that timely request, Eligibility and Budget Review recommended approval of the carryover request conditional on the organization providing some additional information on how it planned to spend down those funds. Wanted to make sure that the organization had a plan to spend down those funds at the same time as existing 2024 grants. So IOLTA, EAF, some HP, homelessness prevention funding they receive, and so forth. Upon their submission of that updated or additional documentation, the organization ultimately revised its carryover request to just $50,000, which is about 22% of the grant award amount. And the organization also reported that they've already spent about $46,000 of that $50,000 in anticipation of the carryover being approved, and they have a reasonable plan to spend down the remaining funds. So at this point, staff would recommend approval of that revised carryover amount, which is $50,000. So there is a proposed resolution here for your consideration, but happy to stop and pause for any questions or discussion before reading.
Great. Does anybody have questions?
Okay, hearing none, I will.
Danielle, can I ask one question?
Of
This
course.
is really just for my own curiosity. I'm just curious, like, what they asked for 100% originally, and I'm just curious, like, what, if there's any, what the reasoning was behind it. I'm sure it's
Yes. So, the organization in their original budget proposal request had, or excuse me, their carryover request had said they had issues spending down 2023 because of the 2-year carryover, or excuse me, the 2-year EAF for 2022. And then in the EBR meeting, we had several grantees with large carryover requests, and the committee had asked those grantees to provide information on their spend down plans and how they proposed to spend down those funds in the first 6 months of 2024 if the carryover were to be approved. And in that conversation, California Women's Law Center identified that they would be able to spend down some of the funds, but ultimately thought it was most appropriate to return funds that they ultimately didn't think they would be able to spend down in that first 6 months. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Selena?
Great.
And this is also really important, is that they didn't realize they could return part of the funds.
Ah.
A couple of organizations have told me that they thought they had to carry over and spend down everything. But if they are told earlier in the process that they could carry over some and give back what they know they can't spend. I saw several organizations do that this time, and I thought that really reflected reasonableness when hiring is often the challenge.
Great. That's awesome. Thank you for that additional information to both of you guys and for answering my question. Okay, great. Any other questions?
Catherine will move the motion.
Great. Thanks, Catherine. Second.
I'll second Morales.
Great. Thanks, Maria. Why don't we take our vote?
Alikani,
Yes.
Ball,
Yes.
Blakemore,
Yes.
Campbell, Escobedo, Galkin,
Yes.
Gonzalez,
Yes.
Hong,
Yes.
Iskin, King,
Yes.
Klein, Cruz, Lee, Mahoney,
Yes.
Milrod,
Yes.
Morales,
Yes.
Pryor,
Yes.
Sanville,
Yes.
Vargas, Al-Saraf,
Yes.
Connolly.
Yes.
14 yes, 0 no's, motion passes.
Great. Okay, let's move to the second one. Danielle, back to you.
Yes. So this one I would invite Angela, as she's now promoted to panelist, to take over the reins for our discussion of Coalition of California Welfare Rights Organizations.
Thank you, Danielle. I appreciate that. So hello, my name is Angela O'Hara, and I'll be providing a brief overview on the following slides because you've all read through the thorough memo that was provided with all the detail, and we're mindful of keeping it brief. So these are the topics that we'll discuss: the background, CCWR's IOLTA and EF budget revision and carryover requests, some history of noncompliance, and then the working group recommendations and the proposed resolutions. So this first slide shows CCWRO's 2023 IOLTA and EAF grant awards. As of the January 31st deadline, CCWRO had yet to provide complete and accurate information detailing its request to modify the budget and carry over funds not spent during the grant period. Staff gave multiple opportunities to correct submissions, but an accurate budget was not submitted prior to the Eligibility and Review Committee on March 1st, 2024. So at that time, the committee charged a working group to review the requests, considering the history of noncompliance with other state bar administered grant obligations. So if we can see the next slide, please. So this slide shows the budget revision and carryover requests and an explanatory bullet about each. We'll provide more detail as we move forward. Notably, the original budget revision submissions exceeded the total grant awards and required multiple revisions back and forth with staff to arrive at the requests that are presented here. So if we could see the next one. This slide shows sort of the reasoning that was provided for the budget revisions and carryover requests, referencing hiring challenges, lower than expected non-personnel expenses due to remote work, Spending on non-personnel includes contract services for an IT consultant that supported CCWO and QLSPs in navigating CalSAWs. The carryover explanation that was provided, it was very limited in its description of the steps that would be taken to spend down funds. So next, we'll just briefly go into the history of non-compliance. And then unfortunately, CCWO has a history of providing inaccurate and incomplete materials and not complying with grant obligations. This was detailed in the memo, and I will highlight just a few important points here, including CCWO's participation in an eligibility review conference that found them eligible for 2024 funding contingent upon several conditions and recommendations, including submitting complete, accurate, and timely documentation. Also notable was the recommendation to keep CCWO's board of directors informed ongoing. So we can move to the next slide. Here we have more of the non-compliance as it relates specifically to CCWO's homelessness prevention grants. The commission is very familiar with the timeline of events and attempts by staff and the HP committee to help CCWO remedy their issues. So here's just a few events that you're familiar with. And then I would move us to the next slide where the working group, as mentioned previously, Catherine and Maria Morales met with staff on March 18th to review and discuss CCWO's updated IOLTA and EAF budget revision carryover request. The discussion focused on the lateness of the submissions, the multiple incomplete and inaccurate submissions requiring repeated follow-up, the deviation from the guidelines on spending ratios for the EAF grants, unclear and inadequate explanations to support the revisions, and then how it plans to spend down the remaining funds, and then just this ongoing pattern of non-compliance and accounting concerns, as well as the numerous actions by the EBR, HP committee, and staff have taken to try and help with compliance. So that's the brief overview. At this point, I would now invite Catherine and Maria to provide additional input and share their recommendations.
Sure, thank you. And I really appreciate the staff time and Maria's time in joining the working group to make some recommendations to you. I will note that the Eligibility Budget Review Committee, along with the Homeless Prevention Committee, has spent considerable time trying to find solutions for this grantee. And most recently, it was on the slide, but we went through it pretty quickly. We met with them in January, including with their board president, which was sort of the next step in trying to obtain compliance. And I think at that meeting, the president understood, as well as the executive director, that they needed to submit everything on time. They needed to do it accurately, etc. Although the outcome of that meeting was a continued not submitting documents on time, not providing all of the information that was required. So we were left with what other strategies could we use, because the efforts that you saw to date have not resulted in any change in the ability of the organization. So we have 3 recommendations to you, and then I'm going to let Maria give her impressions as well. So the first is that their budget revision, despite its lateness, was under the 25% amount, and the explanation was reasonable. This is for IOLTA budget. And it confirmed with spending guidelines, so therefore that could be approved. We recommend denying their EAF budget revision request of 31% because the revision relates to how they plan to spend the carryover funds. And we recommend denying the carryover request of 30% due to its lateness. And no, it was not submitted until a month after the deadline, and there's an inadequate explanation of their plan to spend down the remaining funds. So those are the recommendations, and Maria, But feel free to weigh in with whatever information you want to share.
Thank you, Catherine. And I'd like to underscore everything that was just mentioned, and also make sure that we highlight the fact that staff has been working with the grantee to provide them the technical support. And even after all of the technical support provided to them, it just was very clear to me that there was still a lot of information that was missing. And I think what was problematic on my end when reviewing and discussing this information with the working group was that there is a repeating pattern, and that there's lack of information, but also lack of communication. And so I just want to underscore that staff has been working diligently to provide them the technical support necessary. And in spite of all that, it's still troublesome to see that the information is still not provided. So I agree with these recommendations with staff. And again, I agree with bullet 1 with approving, and then the remaining 2 bullets with denying the remaining portions. So thank you.
Great. The next slide is the proposed resolutions.
I'm sorry, there's a question. Should we do that first?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm sorry. I couldn't see that on my screen.
Sorry,
I think it's from Tony.
Yeah, and I apologize if I missed something, but can I better understand the reasoning behind the first recommendation? Only because I hear staff repeatedly say that they continue to not be in compliance, and although you know, that it is lower than the 25% and the explanation is reasonable, is there anything else that we are implementing as a part of this recommendation to ensure that they continue to properly report correctly?
So I'll just say, I mean, the reason for the recommendation is because when they finally submitted accurate information, the amount of the request was below the threshold that either staff or the commission needed to approve. So it was sort of self-executing. But there is a plan because there's a requirement for an additional review of the organization next year to ensure that it has met the recommendations from last year and identify other things that might help them be in compliance. And I think you saw in the earlier memo about the homelessness and prevention grant, a whole variety of strategies that that committee recommended implementation of to ensure compliance with those grants, and including submitting timesheets and a whole variety of other strategies. But I will also let, Dwan and others know more than I do about the other things that are ongoing with the grantee.
Yeah, the other thing I would add is, so they submitted a carryover request of 3% for IOLTA, which does not require review or approval. Like Catherine said, that's self-executing based on its size. On the IOLTA budget revision request, the budget revision is of a size that staff would typically be able to approve it. We are bringing it to the commission because of the kind of history of non-compliance here. Part of my understanding is part of the recommendation to approve that budget revision request is those funds have already been spent, and typically with budget revisions requests, so long as the new use of funds is in accordance with our grant requirements, the commission typically approves those budget revision requests, and that's in our I believe grant provisions, that those are typically approved so long as they conform with grant requirements. And once we had the additional information, staff in the committee or working group, had no further concerns about their use of those funds. They seemed conforming with the grant requirements at that point.
Thanks, Danielle. Jeff?
Thank you. Question that I had was, first of all, great appreciation to the working group, but I'd like to have an idea of how much additional staff time has been required on this.
I don't know that we've done that analysis. Dwan, I don't know if you have a sense of that. I've been the primary staff lead, Angela and I, on kind of getting this request up to date, and I don't think that I've tracked my time that granularly to provide that, but we could provide that at the next meeting if it's helpful. During the working group meeting, we did go back and look at how many submissions needed to be submitted to get us to this point, and this was the 6th iteration of their carryover and budget revision form, which is not quite the question you asked, but speaks to the technical assistance and back and forth provided.
Okay, so a lot would be a reasonable answer.
And I also think it's a lot for this and potentially even more on the homelessness prevention grant, and thus you saw all the earlier kind of correction required. But I think staff reported to us at the meeting that hundreds of hours have been spent working with this grantee by multiple staff.
Yeah.
I was just going to add, like, for this particular one, I don't know if we kept track, but because there was compliance issues on our homelessness prevention, I did have staff loosely track their hours on that. And as you recall, in December, that was 100 hours. And then since then, it's now probably more than 70 hours since that December meeting for the HP. On this one, we haven't, but I do agree with Danielle and Catherine. You know, our grantees sometimes do have troubles with the form, but I'd say after like a 1 go, maybe 2, it's good to go. Sometimes they need a little bit more assistance or they have a clarifying question. But 6 does seem a little is out of the norm.
Yeah, it's excessive. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Any other comments or questions? One comment I'll just make back to Tony's point about the budget revisions. One thing I did just want to, more for education, because I know we have some new members, is like just to flag the reason why we basically try to approve budget revisions as so long as they are in compliance with the requirements for the grant is because we want to allow, you know, organizations to have the flexibility to, you know, address needs as necessary. So that way we want to be aware of what's happening, but we don't necessarily, you know, have an intention to kind of like micromanage how they spend their money. So I just wanted to flag that part. The carryover is a different issue, you know, because there's a certain grant period by which we want the money to be spent. So just flagging that as like a high level policy position on that. Selena?
I have a question just a little bit about context, which may help the new members as well, is, you know, how frequently do we see organizations with carryover requests that are this late? And is there a general process that staff follows? And is this, you know, how extraordinary is this? Is what I'm kind of trying to kind of get at.
Yeah, you know, Dwan or some other staff may be more well positioned to speak about this over time, but I will say that all of the other carryover requests were submitted either by the deadline or within the 1 business day after the deadline. A month after the deadline is not something that we saw from any other grantees in this cycle, at least.
I can take a stab at that. You know, like the last few years, because historically we did have more late submissions. I don't have like the numbers off the top of my head or anything like that, but the last few years, because it's really a workflow issue, I think, for the staff and the commission. So I'd say, you know, we've been trying to communicate that, you know, people need to get things in on time, and if not, really communicate with us. So I would say the last few years since we started that communications campaign and those setting expectations, I would say this is an outlier. But previous to that, I think, as you all know, we've had struggle with that, and that's why we codified rules to make it very clear what expectations are.
And I think, you know, and that's a rule that I think Catherine and I worked on. And one of the things we tried to balance there, which I think is reflected here, is, you know, we understand sometimes things happen and people have a hard time getting things uploaded by 5 p.m. That's why staff has discretion to basically approve those things within like a 24-hour business day. Because we understand stuff happens. But I think even when we were doing the work on the rule, it was very rare. I'm not sure we saw any that it would be that this late. And of course, you know, our role is in some ways to be somewhat of an oversight body. So we have to be, the timeliness of submissions can sometimes be a proxy for internal controls. So that's why we think about it. Go ahead, Catherine.
I would just add, I mean, I think it is the lateness of this and the repeated pattern of not being able to submit anything on time for very extended periods of time, and when it is submitted, to have information be inaccurate. And at some point, I think we just have to say enough. We can't continue to do this, and you have a responsibility as a grantee to timely and accurately submit your information. So I think that's, at least for me, it was as much the pattern that was emerging of every item that they submitted being late and every item being inaccurate.
Tony?
And I just wanted to say that, like, and that is really where I am coming from, is a continual pattern. And it would really help if we can have a little bit of, I don't know, to provide me and maybe some newer members with guidance as to how that, what that threshold is, right? Because this is, if this is a repeated pattern, how many times, when is enough?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I will just echo, I think, one thing that Catherine said, and I'll let her sort of say as well, is we did put some heavier oversight requirements on CCWRO from a past issue, and those, I think, remain in place. And so our hope is to help them kind of get back, obviously our goal is to make sure that, organizations use the money and are able to provide services. But yeah, it's, that's one of the rules in the rules committee that we're working on, is how to do with those kinds of things. Joe?
I think you're on mute, Joe.
You think you somehow got muted again. I can't hear you.
Oh, we can't hear you. I don't know. It's not on mute, but we cannot hear you, Joe.
We can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Gonna be a mic thing on his side.
Yeah, maybe the thing is not.
I'll try again. Is
Oh,
this
there you
good?
go.
Okay. So sorry.
No problem.
I have a young child who likes to play with my equipment. So I think someone just asked the right question, when's enough enough? My impression is that we've passed that. The history of recalcitrance, delay, providing bad information, to me, is frankly pretty stunning. And I personally think we are at the point now where we shouldn't be trying to continue to help them. We should be implementing appropriate relief or sanctions based on a long and sustained pattern of failure to play by the rules. We don't have the time and resources to continue dealing with someone who doesn't take this process seriously. I guess I'm the hard ass on the call, but that is my confirmed view, hearing what I'm hearing.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing. Patience.
So that was actually going to be my question. Just used the term recalcitrance. I'm wondering if that's what it was. Huge, proxy for internal controls. Yes. I mean, the numbers are wrong. The basic, like, hey, we're asking you for adjustments to money you haven't even given us or thought of giving us. That is really scary. So it does kind of matter to me whether it's recalcitrance or whether it's incompetence. And those may require different responses. Either way, it makes inquiring minds wonder whether or not state bar money is safe in these people's hands. And I can't imagine at some point staff right on the verge of tearing out their hair by the fistfuls was not saying to these people, what is going on? And hello. And so I'm really curious about what the vibe was. I thank you to Catherine and just people who Maria, people who went to and visited or conferred with I'm just really interested about what the response was. I mean, was it a tail between the legs? Oh my God, this is so terrible. This is all the things we're doing to fix it. Or was it like, hey, we're doing our best and this is what we could, that matters to me. Although I'm not quite certain the outcome would be different, I am supportive of protecting the funding from people who are not willing or capable to handle it.
Duan or Danielle, do you want to address patient's question before, and then I'll let Jason comment?
I can take a stab, and you know, at the meeting with the eligibility budget review committee that CCRW had with also HP committee chair, I wasn't there, but I'll say this: I have had a lot of conversations with the executive director, like really serious heart-to-heart conversations, and they seem to understand kind of the gravity of it. I'll say that, and a desire to want to correct themselves. I think this is my perspective. They're a little bit at a loss of what to do. I have given recommendations of like, maybe perhaps you should hire a deputy or somebody that's like really equipped to handle this and help you with, like, you know, I see this as like a systems infrastructure. I'm hoping it's not bleeding into like service delivery. We'll put a pin in that, but we don't know, right? But in terms of what we know, in terms of like compliance and internal controls, I do feel a real struggle there. But like I said, I feel that there is that desire to want to, you know, because after these meetings that we have at the commission level or at the committee level, they do reach out and then they want help. I guess our problem is at what point is too much technical assistance, like doing their internal controls where they're not equipped to do it. So again, going back to what the root of the problem is, I'm not really sure, but I do think maybe if they hired somebody that is a little bit more equipped and figuring out what their internal controls problems and helping them fix it might go a long way.
Thanks, Duan. I'll let Jason and then Catherine go, but and they're fine to have their comments. One thing I will just flag is for purposes of this meeting, we're just going to be dealing with the carryover and budget request. I will, you know, I invite commission members who think there should be other actions taken to, you know, reach out to staff, or you can contact me and we can consider whether additional steps should be taken. But I did just want to make sure we focus on this particular resolution is what we want to focus on. Jason and then Catherine.
Yeah, I think really quick, just to, you know, slice the difference a little bit between Joseph and patients. I mean, I think we've got a good opportunity to look at this through the Hanlon's razor lens. Like, I'm not going to assume they're being malicious and obstinate and refusing to comply, and especially given some of the things, like it seems like potentially an ignorance thing, which is still a problem. And to the point Patience was raising, I don't know that it changes what we have to do. I think it's probably going to mean the same or similar outcome if they can't improve responsive to this. I know they've hired some folks, or have indicated they've hired some folks like an accountant or something like that, external or contractors, which are going to change some things long term in some of their requests, how much of their request is administrative. But if that is what they need to do to have these expectations met, then rising to that occasion is a good thing. So hopefully we'll see that. But I think it's disappointing how much time was spent and that they weren't ready at the get-go.
Thanks, Jason. Catherine, did you still want to make a comment?
Yeah, I think I don't need to make another comment. I think we can just proceed.
Okay, Jacqueline, last comment, and then we'll move forward.
Yes, so I really agree with everything that's been said, so I won't repeat all that. But in the future, I'd really like to see us take a close look at the quality of their services to their clients, because given their record that we've experienced here, I'm just really wondering what kind of services they're providing. I mean, are they really helping people, and what the actual consumers feel about the services that they've received from them, and like how many cases have they opened, how many have they closed, and closed with having actually resolved problems that our community stakeholder consumers have had.
Dawn, did you want to respond?
Yeah, I was going to say there is a follow-up site visit that's happening with them this year. So that will give us an opportunity to take a little bit of a deeper dive in both like their fiscal procedures as well as client service delivery. I had this question that was asked to me at HP in terms of like the quality of their client, and I'll share this with you. I mean, as and this is anecdotal, right? I never heard like a complaint from them about their service delivery. With that said, I don't know if we've like have been out there looking aggressively. There are some things that probably can improve that are like easy to do. I know there was a commissioner that pointed out some things on their website were out of date, but I think like beyond that, we have to really, I think talk, like you said, Jacqueline, talk about the people that are beneficiaries, their support centers, so they don't take on direct clients. But it would be really like the QSPs, the legal aid community that they're serving. So I think there's probably a way that we can build that into our monitor visit to get that information that you all need.
Great. Okay, just given our time crunch, I do want to sort of move this forward. Do we have a motion?
Calvin will move.
For resolution? Okay, sorry.
This is Jeff, I'll second.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, it was Jason moved and Jeff seconded, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was fast.
Yeah, that's fast. Okay. Alakani,
Yes.
Ball,
Yes.
Blakemore,
Yes.
Campbell, Escobedo, Galkin,
Yes.
Gonzalez,
Yes.
Huang,
Yes.
Iskin, King,
Yes.
Pine, Cruz, Lee,
Joey,
Joseph, are you still there, Joseph?
Yeah, it's happening again. Yes,
Okay,
sorry.
thank you.
Can't blame my kid this time.
No problem. Mahoney,
Yes.
Milrod,
Yes.
Morales?
Yeah.
Pryor,
Yes.
Sandville,
Yes.
Vargas, Al-Sarraf,
Yes.
Connolly,
Yes.
15 yes, 0 no's, motion passes.
Great. Thank you all. This was great discussion, and many, many thanks to staff and to the working group and to EB&R for all of the work. I know this takes a lot of effort and oversight, and we really appreciate you guys getting this all prepared for us and having a good discussion about it. So thank you very much. Okay, so the next thing I believe is also involving CCWRO, but this from HP instead of EB&R. And so I'll turn it over to Jennifer, who's going to talk to us about that.
Thank you. I'll share my screen. Okay, so this is action on Coalition of California Welfare Rights Organizations 2021 to 2024 Homelessness Prevention Formula Grant, or HP3. I'll go over some background, then review CCWRO's most recently submitted materials, and then we'll have a proposed resolution. As already discussed today, staff identified a number of issues with CCWRO's HP2 and 3 formula grants. You can see the issues here. I want to stress that staff has provided extensive TA, as we've already discussed. And now I'm going to shift to focusing on the HP3 grant. Through a series of HP Funds Committee and Commission resolutions, there were a series of requirements put forth for CCWRO to try to get their HP3 formula grant into compliance. Most recently, at the December 13th Commission meeting, the Commission passed a number of resolutions requiring CCWRO to meet with staff and CCWRO's board chair to discuss quality controls and internal controls issues. A second HP3 desk review for CCWRO in 2024, requiring CCWRO to revise its grant on its quarter 8 expenditures report, which was due January 31st, 2024. Requiring accurate and complete remaining documentation for 2023 to be submitted to staff by January 31st, and to submit a revised spend down plan and a budget revision request for the HP3 formula grant for January 1st, 2024 until the end of the grant, which is December 31st of this year. And that was also due January 31st. So very briefly, on January 11th, a working group of staff and commissioners met with CCWRO and its board president in order to fulfill part of that resolution. Catherine touched on that briefly. It was a good conversation. There was robust discussion, and it seemed like the board president in particular was supportive of what needs to happen. The following day, staff met with CCWRO to provide it with additional technical assistance to ensure that all of those deliverables I mentioned that were due January 31st could be completed timely and accurately. And of note, by January 31st, CCWRO did submit all of the required deliverables. However, there were problems with many of the deliverables that were submitted. Specifically, CCWRO's revisions on the HP3 Q8 expenditure report were incorrect. They captured only its year 2 spending. It's supposed to capture spending to date. This is something that has been constant. So this was the 8th quarter that they submitted this report. They submitted timesheets, allocation reports, and accounting reports as required. However, those documents did not reflect adjustments to actual activity. They were still based on budgets. Adjusting to actual activity is a major requirement of the grant. And because of this, CCWRO's unspent funds were underreported by close to $16,000. Additionally, although CCWRO submitted a revised HP3 spend down plan and budget revision request by the required deadline, these documents also underreported the unspent funds by that $16,000 amount. And as a result, although the revision was 22.9%, which could technically be approved by staff, staff could not approve it because the revision and spend down plans did not accurately reflect the total funds expended so far. I can pause here if there are any questions before we get to the resolution. Okay, I don't see any.
Me neither. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Thank you. So this is a long resolution, and I just, you'll see that there are 6 parts to it. So just as we're reading it, I want to specify that the first 4, as well as the last part of the resolution, are related to Code of Federal Regulations compliance. The 5th part of the resolution is a state bar requirement. I'm happy to read the resolution now, unless, Erica, you think that's unnecessary.
I don't think we need to read it out loud. I just want to confirm my understanding is basically we are putting them on essentially a reimbursement plan.
Correct.
So they will have to report to us what their expenses are, and then we will, on a monthly basis, reimburse them for the amounts. Is that correct?
That's correct. And that would be until the commission decides that CCWRO has come into compliance, at which time they could receive the rest of their year 3 allocation in a lump sum, as all other grantees do.
And sorry, just to confirm, as far as the coming into compliance, is it just a matter of like making sure their reporting is accurate on an ongoing basis, or fixed the past reporting problems, or both?
It's both. So for HP3, because it's a federal grant, unlike other reports where grantees may be able to revise, the mechanism for revision is actually through future quarters. So the resolution lays out that CCWRO will have to revise its grant on its quarter 9 expenditure report, which is due for all grantees on April 26th. Other parts of coming into compliance will be revising its spend down plan and budget revision request, and those documents will also be due on the same day, just to make sure that all of the numbers match perfectly and it's for the exact same time period.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer. Any other questions? I don't see any hands raised. Is anyone ready to move?
Patience has her hand raised. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Patience. I apologize.
So no worries. So this sounds really labor intensive for staff. And I'm also curious, and I don't know how, I don't want to make this any more cumbersome than it already is, but at some point we have to do a cost benefit analysis about how much staff time goes into flogging these people into some semblance of compliance. So at some point, I would be supportive of a more streamlined way of ensuring compliance than this at the molecular level dealing with each grantee. So I'm curious if there's an elegantly graceful, efficient way to do it, to know what kind of staff time ends up going into this particular compliance plan.
Dawn or Jennifer, do you guys want to respond, and then let Catherine?
Sure. So I think Dwan gave an accurate estimate of staff time to date. And I would agree with that. And just moving forward, I would say that at this point, staff do continue to offer technical assistance to CCWRO. Just yesterday, I emailed the executive director and offered additional technical assistance. And we will continue to do that. I would say moving forward, we are going to not only do that, but we'll wait until the April 26th deadline, at which point staff will review all of the materials that are required to be submitted. And it will depend at that point on whether the materials look correct and complete. If that's the case, obviously we would need to wait anyway until the next HP Funds Committee and Commission meeting in order to present that out and go back to a lump sum allocation. But that's kind of what staff time looks like going forward on a best case scenario, if that answers the question.
Catherine, go ahead, and then I have a follow-up comment.
So I just want to say that I agree with Patience about the amount of staff time. And I, on the other hand, know that, as I recall from our last discussion, that the remedies available with these federal funds are more prescriptive than the flexibility we have with other funds. This is, to me, the equivalent of what the federal government does when you receive federal funds, which is put you on high-risk grantee status, where you have to, it's cost reimbursement. And I guess what I would like to know at the next meeting is, one, how did it go with this process? Did they provide you with accurate information or not? And the amount of time it took staff with the back and forth with the grantee, and then whether there are other options after we try this for the quarter, to see what other options might be available if it unfortunately was not a successful approach, so that we can, the committee can then make some recommendations about what to do next. And I'm not asking that to be part of the motion, just sort of my sense of, we need some more information about what can happen if this approach doesn't work.
Juan, did you want to address that, or did you want me to address that?
You could. I just want to make a note. Erica, a public member just have their hand up. I believe it's from the representative from the organization. But Jennifer, why don't you address it? And I do have actually a substantive comment too after that.
Sure. So I was just going to say, Catherine, to your comment, under the CFR, if the State Bar does determine subsequently that the non-compliance cannot be remedied, there are further steps that can be taken, which I'm happy to go over if commissioners are interested. But my understanding from talking with OGC is that at this point, the remedies that the committee has recommended are what's appropriate according to the CFR.
And I was just going to say, the CFR does actually a really good job of laying out kind of like a escalation plan for oversight bodies like ourselves. And so we are going along that track at a juncture where the commission determines that they with all the technical assistance, all the help, they just don't think that, the organization can be in compliance at that juncture. Then we can talk about other more serious remedies like discontinuing the grant or pulling back money. But I don't think we're quite there yet. So we'll see how it goes the next round, and hopefully they'll be back on track.
Great. Okay, I will let the public member make comment, but 3 minutes, okay? Go ahead.
Just want to say that we have no problem with the resolution, and we appreciate the technical assistance. It's kind of, but it's kind of chilling to ask for technical assistance and then sort of be chastised at this meeting for giving technical assistance. It sort of chills. It's kind of chilling, but it is what it is. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Aslanian. Is there any other comments or questions?
Catherine moves the motion.
Okay.
A second.
Was that Tony?
Yes.
Great.
Okay, I'll do roll call. Alakani?
Yes.
Ball?
Yes.
Blakemore?
Yes.
Campbell? Escobedo? Galkin?
Yes.
Gonzalez?
Yes.
Huang?
Yes.
Iskin? King?
Yes.
Klein? Cruz? Lee?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Yes.
Milrod?
Yes.
Morales?
Yes.
Pryor?
Yes.
Stanville?
Yes.
Vargas? Al-Sarraf?
Yes.
Connolly?
Yes.
15 yes, 0 no's, motion passes.
Great. And let me just echo again my significant gratitude to staff and to the HP committee and the various commissioners who've been really helpful on this. One thing I do want to note is I just want to say I'm so appreciative of the fact that staff gives technical assistance, but there are 110 organizations now who all have to come in and who also have sometimes questions. And so our staff obviously needs to address more than just, 1 or 2 organizations. So while we are very grateful to them for the help that they give to those organizations, we just want to make sure that that time is being used, effectively and efficiently, and is not sort of addressing, issues that are, that need to be addressed, that need to be resolved at a higher level with us. All right, why don't we then turn to the next point, 4.3, which is about the LA County Bar Association, Counsel for Justice and Legal Aid Society. Oh, sorry, Counsel for Justice and the Legal Aid Society of San Bernardino's carryover requests. And this is Angela.
Hello, thank you. Thank you again. And I hope everyone can hear me. I just saw that my internet is unstable. So in the interest of time, I'm going to bypass slides and do a verbal presentation about 4.3. So I'll be providing, everyone received a memo with an attachment A, but I'll be providing a very brief overview of this item, which is regarding 2 2022 Partnership Grant 2.0 carryover requests. So as you know, the budget revision and carryover requests that exceed 25% of total grant award require commission approval, review and approval. The Partnership Grants Committee usually reviews requests in advance of this meeting and makes a recommendation whether to approve, and it goes on consent. Unfortunately, staff overlooked 2 carryover requests that exceeded 25% prior to the PG committee meeting that was on February 6th. So these two are coming to the commission directly for approval. Because this oversight was just due to technical errors, the carryover requests have not been marked late, and staff recommends considering them as if they were submitted timely. So I will now just briefly go through them. So as you saw in attachment A of the memo, the first is from the LA County Bar Association Counsel for Justice, requesting a 28% carryover for its DVRO remote access project. And the reason given due to difficulty hiring, implementation was delayed, but qualified staff is now in place for all critical positions. Staff finds their explanation for the carryover and the plan to spend down the remaining funds to be reasonable and recommends approval. So the second is from Legal Aid Society of San Bernardino, requesting a 32% carryover for its domestic violence and homelessness prevention program. This was due to challenges in personnel recruitment and some logistical issues related to its expansion to the Riverside Superior Court. LASSB plans to use the funds to train staff, expand virtual assistance, enhance the on-site services, and increase its outreach efforts. Staff found their explanation for the carryover and the plan to spend down the funds to be reasonable and also recommends approval. So as I mentioned, staff recommends approval of both of these carryover requests. And now in this moment, I'm going to share the screen to present a motion for your approval. One moment, please. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. So I'm hoping everyone can see, is it? Looks funny.
It like went small.
It looks funny, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
How about that? Does that look better?
Oh, yeah, much better.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Thank you, Angela.
But again, I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have. In absence of questions, I would happily read these motions.
I don't think you need to read them out loud, but thank you for the offer. Do we have any questions on this?
I'll make a motion to approve the proposed resolutions.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. Do we have a second?
Second.
Patience. Thank you.
I'll do roll call. Alicani,
Yes.
Ball,
Yes.
Blakemore,
Yes.
Campbell, Escobedo, Gulkin.
Yes, as to Legal Aid, our Los Angeles County Bar Association Council of Justices, and abstain as to Legal Aid Society of San Bernardino.
Great, thank you. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Huang,
Yes.
Iskin, King,
Yes.
Klein, Cruz, Lee,
Yes.
Mahoney,
Yes.
Milrod,
Yes.
Morales,
Yes.
Pryor,
Yes.
Sanville,
Yes.
Vargas, Al-Saraf,
Yes.
Connolly.
Yes.
15 yes, 0 no's, 1 abstention. Motion passes.
Great. Thank you, guys. And yeah, it's good for us to sometimes see the direct to carryover requests. So appreciate that we got a chance to do that this time. All right. Thank you all. Let's move next to the 4.4, which is about approving a delegation of authority to reallocate the Cal HFA foreclosure prevention grant funds. And I'm going to turn this over to Chris, but I will also be on hand to answer questions if necessary.
Thank you, Erica. Can you hear me okay? This is a brand new headset as of today, so I just want to make sure that it's good. Okay, good. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. So this one I have just a few minutes for, and then I think I also have the next agenda item, and I'll have a little more time, but I'm going to try and get us through this one on time to save more time for the next one. So for approving delegation of authority to reallocate California Housing Finance Agency grant funds. Just a couple of slides. One is a refresher, or it might be new information for the newer commissioners. But the Cal HFA, The Cal HFA foreclosure prevention grants are administered through the Commission State Bar via a contract with the Cal HFA Homeowner Relief Corporation. So if I say Cal HFA HRC, that's what I'm referring to. They are federal funds made available by pandemic relief statutes. They fund qualifying homeowner mortgage legal services to prevent qualifying homeowner mortgage delinquencies, defaults, foreclosures, loss of utilities or home energy services, and displacements of homeowners experiencing financial hardship. In the spring of 2022, the full commission delegated authority to the executive committee to make these awards. The committee approved 11 grants, totaling a little over $11 million. That was in this summer of 2022. And this is for a 3-year grant period that ends June 30th, 2025. And this is arising now because of one of two things. The first is that about 7 months into the 3-year grant period, one of the 11 grantees, Public Counsel, volunteered to give up a little bit of their grant. I think maybe like 20% or so of their grant was $216,594. They anticipated kind of early that they were going to be able to perform their project with less funding than they received. So in the spirit of giving some of that back so that other grantees might be able to use it, they didn't have to do this, but they volunteered to relinquish that. Staff recommended at the time that the committee and commission wait to see if other grantees might also volunteer to relinquish funds, and also to give all grantees a chance to figure out if they could even use more funds to perform their qualifying project. So because this happened only 7 months into the 3-year grant period, we waited until about the midway point, about 18 months, and we are now bringing a recommendation for reallocation before the full commission, having consulted with the committee. So December 31 was the midway point. We have reached out, the staff team has reached out to the 11 grantees to get a sense of if anyone else might have funds left over other than Public Counsel that has already volunteered to relinquish funds. No one else has said that they think they'll have funds left over. We've asked if they think they might be able to spend additional funds. At least 3 programs think they can. So we do think the timing is right to go ahead and recommend a reallocation of this $216,594 and possibly also some potentially unspent administrative funds from the state bar. So the state bar has funding to administer these grants that it has set aside. So to the extent that our office, the state bar and its fiscal team thinks some of those funds might be left over, we can also reallocate those early to make sure that there's as much funding as possible for services. There's about 15 months left in the grant period, so that there is time for grantees that can absorb more funds to do so by June 30th of 2025. The staff and executive committee recommend that the commission delegate authority for this reallocation because it is likely to be a relatively small amount of the total pot of funds. There are only 11 Cal HFA grantees, maybe only around 3 to 4 that have expressed interest in absorbing more funds. So we think a streamlined process is justified. And then additionally, this might entail a contract amendment with Cal HFA HRC, which they are supportive of. But just because we don't know quite how long that will take, we want to be a little bit nimble here, maximize the amount of time for grantees to spend down absorbed funds. And so we propose to work with the executive committee on a reallocation for what might be just a small number of programs. So that's the kind of the basis for the delegation of authority. Happy to take questions. Eric, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add, but the slide is the proposed resolution.
Thanks, Chris. Any questions? Okay.
Catherine moves the resolution.
Great. Thanks, Catherine.
Tony seconds.
Thanks, Tony.
Alakani,
Yes.
Ball,
Yes.
Blakemore,
Yes.
Campbell, Escobedo, Gulkin,
Yes.
Gonzalez,
Yes.
Hong,
Yes.
Iskin, King,
Yes.
Klein, Cruz, Lee,
Yes.
Mahoney,
Yes.
Milrod,
Yes.
Morales,
Yes.
Pryor,
Yes.
Stanville,
Yes.
Vargas, Al-Saraf,
Yes.
Connolly.
Yes.
15 yes, 0 no's, motion passes.
Great. All right, thank you for that. Okay, Chris, you said you have the next one too.
Yes, it's me again. And this one I have a little bit more time for because there's more interesting content here for you. So this piece will end in a recommendation for the full commission to delegate authority to the Care Court Grants Committee to approve an RFP for Care Court grants using state fiscal year 24-25 funding, and also to recommend awards to the full commission for it to approve in June. It's going to start with a few slides, though, that are going to sort of refresh the full commission about what the Care Court program is, and present some early data from this year's funding recipients to kind of like tee up this recommendation. So as a quick refresher for a couple of commissioners who might be new to Care Court, the governor signed the CARE Act into law back in September of 2022. It stands for Community Assistance, Recovery, and Empowerment Act. It creates Care Court, which is a new court program, or a relatively new court program now, where adults with qualifying as an enumerated in the statute, severe mental health issues can access behavioral health care, stabilization medication, housing, and other community services and supports. It is a civil proceeding. The program launched in the fall of 2023 in 7 counties. I just listed them here in the second bullet point. And it launched in December of 2023 in Los Angeles County. So in 2023, it launched in 8 counties. And the CARE Act requires that Care Court launch statewide by the end of this year, or December 1, rather, 2024. Care courts have to appoint qualified legal services projects, so this commission's grantees, to represent those who are the subject of a Care Court petition or a Care Court respondent. And then the CARE Act says if no QLSP has agreed to represent respondents in that jurisdiction, the court must appoint a public defender office to represent them instead. The CARE Act also says that this commission funds the QLSPs and public defender offices to represent respondents in CARE Act proceedings and matters related to care agreements and plans. And also the commission may fund support centers to provide training, support, and coordination. And it's actually a combination of the CARE Act and that year's Budget Act that sort of provides this funding for QLSPs, public defender offices, support centers, and other entities. So the two, the statutes work together for this, but essentially the commission administers the funding and reporting for these stakeholders. Before I show you the data from the first quarter of Care Court in California, which would be October 1 through December 31 of 2023, I just want to note that it is a little bit restrictive who can be a Care Court respondent, intentionally so, I think. So when you see the numbers and if you think they look kind of low, this might account for the number of cases, appointments as of the end of December. This might be part of the reason. Care Court is limited to adults. They do have to be experiencing a severe mental illness with a specified schizophrenia or other diagnosis that's enumerated in the statute. And then there's all these sort of like off ramps at the very beginning of a case where a court might dismiss the case because one or more of these things doesn't exist. So it's for adults who are not already stabilized in ongoing voluntary treatment. There's a rather medium high to high barrier of entry around their ability to survive safely in the community without Care Court. And it has to be one of the least restrictive alternatives to ensuring their recovery and stability. And they have to be likely to benefit from participating in a care plan agreement. So there's all these ways that someone might not actually end up becoming a Care Court respondent. And that, I think you will see on the next slide, has contributed to what has been a modest number of cases in the first quarter of Care Court. But of course, this could change quickly. So in October through December, and this is data from the commission's funding recipients. These are from public defender offices serving the 8 counties that launched Care Courts in 2023, and the counties are on the x-axis here, as well as 2 qualified legal services projects who are grantees for this state fiscal year. The commission has funded Justice and Diversity Center of the Bar Association of San Francisco to represent respondents in San Francisco County, and also legal assistance to the elderly to represent respondents in San Francisco County. So San Francisco County has 2 QLSPs and a public defender office. All the other counties, it's just the public defender office. So in the first 3 months, you can see how many cases these QLSPs and public defender offices opened. These were court appointments. The one sort of like asterisk here is Los Angeles, as I said, launched its care court in December. So this reflects only 1 month of data for them, whereas for the other counties, it's 3 months. 154 cases were opened by public defender offices and QLSPs in October through December of 2023. The ones that say that they've closed, a matter that goes on to a care agreement or plan, which would be sort of like the ultimate outcome of the Care Act proceeding, might actually take a year or more to close. In this very first quarter, the closed cases actually represent cases that were dismissed because one or more of the eligibility criteria weren't met. So it was like opened and appointed, but then it couldn't go forward for some reason. Just to give you a sense of who's filing the petitions to have someone become a care court respondent, these are the statutory categories of who can be a petitioner, but I won't go through all of them, but I'll just kind of point out most of the petitions in the first quarter were brought by family members. There's 98 of them, of the 154, followed by behavioral health agencies, those are county agencies, and first responders. We are collecting, pursuant to the Budget Act of 2023's requirements for the commission's reporting for care court funding recipients. We're collecting much of the same data that we collect for other grants that the commission administers. Like we do collect like race and ethnicity data. I'm just going to show you a little snapshot though of a larger data set we've collected. For age, about 68% of those cases in the first few months were non-senior adults. 32% were seniors. About 63% of those respondents identify as males, 36% female, 1% was gender identity unknown. And I think this is my kind of last data point I want to show you before I start to talk about the RFP, was we also collect data on the housing statuses of respondents. Almost half are unhoused when the petition is filed, followed by in permanent housing and then unknown, with some in temporary housing and some in institutional housing. So I just to say we are collecting a lot of other data, but I just wanted to give you kind of a sense of what the respondent and appointments picture looks like. The State Bar convened cohort 1 and cohort 2 public defender offices and QLSPs in February, and cohort 1 refers to the counties that launched care courts in 2023. Cohort 2 refers to the counties that statutorily have to launch in this year in 2024. So it brought all of them together, introduced them to the State Bar's work, the commission's work, our roles with care court administering the funding and reporting. That was in mid-February. The goal was to facilitate implementation of the CARE Act and Budget Act of 2023 and forthcoming Budget Act of 2024. We had 111 representatives from the Legal Services Trust Funds Commission's care court stakeholders, 52 in person, 59 remotely. The room was relatively full. There were 7 counties from cohort 1 in Los Angeles out of 8 possible, and 19 counties from cohort 2 that attended. And they heard from a panel of the 2 QLSPs and public defenders serving San Francisco. They heard from another panel of cohort 1 and LA County services providers, where it's sort of cohort 1, those offices shared their advice with their peer cohort 1 offices and cohort 2 offices. One of the commission's support centers, DREDF, Disability Rights Education Defense Fund, came and gave a great presentation on centering accessibility and autonomy in care court for sort of maximizing the effectiveness and sensitivity of services to care court respondents who, again, have statutorily have to have severe mental health issues. And then they broke up into small working groups and had which facilitated peer support. And it also featured an update on resources from the Office of the State Public Defender, which is providing legal training and technical assistance to this year's funding recipients. Here's a great photo that kind of shows you how full the room was. It was a really terrific working meeting that brought in people from all over the state. In the interest of time, I'm going to move on to the example RFP that was posted for today's meeting, which is to facilitate a delegation of authority to the CARE Grants Committee to approve an actual RFP, hopefully in mid-April. There's just a few slides here and a proposed resolution. Dwan and Erica, I think this will probably just take me like 3 or 4 minutes, but if I'm running too long, you can feel free to, tell me to speed up. Okay. So the tricky thing about the timing of this RFP is it's the Budget Act of 2024, which is a statute that is likely to pass in late spring, early summer. It could be mid to late June. It's that statute that will actually provide the funding that this commission will administer to QLSPs, public defender offices, qualified support centers, and possibly additional other entities that would qualify for funding for services that would start on July 1. So normally this commission would wait until the authorizing statute had passed with an official funding level and distribution parameters before, say, releasing an RFP. But because CareCourt has already launched in 8 counties and may launch in an additional 2 or more by July 1, waiting until the authorizing statute passes in mid to late June would otherwise force the commission to release an RFP later in the summer and make award decisions later in the summer or fall. And then we'd have months that would go by where care courts wouldn't know if a qualified legal services project was supposed to be representing respondents there, the public defender office, or something else. And there isn't actually anything stopping the commission from being able to release a conditional RFP in the spring, subject to the final language of the Budget Act of 2024, and even from making conditional awards at its meeting in June, provided that those awards eventually comply with the authorizing statute, and that might entail, say, the CARE Grants Committee meeting in July to make like technical revisions to bring the awards into compliance if necessary. That's just to say this work can actually start in the spring. But the timing is unusual. We're working with a gubernatorial funding proposal for 24-25 services. So the governor has recommended, this was last spring, and then he kept the funding level, the funding proposal the same in his January 2024 budget proposal, but has recommended $51.7 million for QLSPs, public defender offices, support centers, and other entities to perform the work that the commission would be funding them to perform. We do have here in bold, though, that of course that funding amount might change in the final budget act this summer, and data is still emerging about the funding need to do this work in the next state fiscal year. The funding could be lower. And my next slide is just to sort of illustrate why that might be. So I'm going to skip over this one. Oh, sorry. If it is 51.7 million, I wanted to just show that staff estimates that the amount that would be available to represent respondents would be about 92% of the total. So if it was 51.7 million was the pot for all of these funding recipients, be a little over 47 million to represent respondents statewide, up to 4% for legal training and technical assistance, and up to 4% to cover judicial counsel and state bar costs. And that's just kind of keeping the ratios about the same to what they were in the 23-24 fiscal year. That's this year. So this slide is one that kind of is meant to show you why funding levels might be lower than what the governor has proposed, although I will say staff has been in conversations with the State Department of Finance, and they do support us continuing to use the governor's January 2024 funding proposal. That is still the official proposal. But just to manage expectations, for the current state fiscal year, that's this July 1 through this June 30th, through the end of this June, everyone estimated about 4,000 care court cases, not just petitions, but like actual cases where there are appointments. As of the end of December, as you saw, there were only 154. So of course, now we're in the end of March. So as soon as we see Q1 2024 reporting, that number will be higher. But there's a very good chance it's going to be well shy of 4,000 by the end of this June. And that could be a reason why the funding amount for 24-25 is lower than the 51.7 million. So this is just to manage expectations, to say these are the numbers. But we do actually check in pretty regularly with our colleagues in other departments, including the Department of Finance, and the governor's January 2024 funding proposal is still the one that everyone supports using at this time. I'm just going to say that staff has presented to the CareCore Grants Committee that staff recommends that the 24-25 RFP look pretty similar to the RFP for 23-24. The funding amount will be different. The funding formula might change. Staff is working with the committee to look at different ways the formula might need. This would be the formula that would decide how much funding is available in each county. What might make sense to keep the same versus change. But essentially, we think things like the request for proposals rubric would stay the same. The eligibility criteria would stay the same. And even the funding requirements would stay about the same. And that's just to maintain consistency where consistency is warranted. Keeping things like the funding requirement or the reporting requirements the same allows us to compare data across years and the like. So this was a topic. I think my next slide is actually the proposed resolution, but this is one where I think maybe Eric and Dwan and I thought maybe people would have questions. So I defer to the chair as to how much time there might be for questions, but I'm happy to answer any.
If you don't mind, why don't we put up the resolution just so that everyone's clear on what it is you're asking, so that we understand what it is you're asking us to do, which is, and I don't need you to read it out loud, but just to make sure I understand the gist, it's basically to delegate to the Care Court Committee essentially authority to put out the RFP, make a review of the grants, come up with the funding formula, and make a recommendation to us.
That's correct. Yeah. So to delegate authority to release the RFP likely in mid-April, and the committee actually has a meeting already scheduled for April 11th where it could do that. We would release the application as soon as possible after that, likely that day or the next day. And then the committee would run a scoring process. It would probably meet in early June to recommend awards to the full commission. So the full commission would still be in the position of approving the final awards at its June meeting.
Great. And I just want to add, and I think Chris said this earlier, but just so the commissioners are clear, we will be releasing an RFP before we know the final number and the budget. And this is because there's a little bit of a lag. Like we want services to start, but then we're not going to, in order to our grant making, that just it's not possible. So we've communicated that with our various partner agencies as well as DOF, and everybody is appreciative actually of the fact that we're doing it a little bit earlier. But because of that, there will be language in the RFP that says contingent on the final budget amount. We had a commissioner that suggested at the committee level to actually have ranges in there just to manage expectations. So we'll do at the top range what's in the governor's office, and then we will probably then deduct it like a table that goes down by I can't remember what Chris and I decided, 5 or 10 million down to like 30 million or something, just so that people have a sense. But it's a little bit awkward in the way we're doing it.
Yeah, that all makes sense. Any questions from any of the commission members?
I strongly support having a committee do this, and thank you so much to those of you who are serving on this committee and to the staff. This is a really much more efficient way to do it, and we can't pass this thing too quickly, so let's do it.
Thanks, Patience. Jacqueline, did you have a comment? I saw your hand.
Just great presentation. Very impressive outcomes. I really like the data presentation, showing the actual numbers, the charts and graphs showing actual numbers of the patients that we're helping. This is so important. I really like this program, and seeing our dollars at work out in the community, helping to make a difference. Very important. Thank you.
Thanks, Jacqueline. And yes, and I will just echo Jacqueline's point and Patience's point. I will also say thank you, Chris, for basically giving us not only like information for the delegation, but an update on kind of what's happening in this space. And I echo that the committee that's working on this seems to be doing great work, and we really appreciate it. And I'm curious to see if there's going to be more organizations that apply for the grants this go around. I think the last time there weren't as many. It was more on the public defenders, but well, it'll be interesting to see. All right, any other comments or questions? If not, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Great, thanks, Jonathan. How about a second?
Second.
Patience, thank you very much.
Okay, do roll call. Alikani,
Yes.
Ball,
Yes.
Blakemore,
Yes.
Campbell, Escobedo, Gulkin,
Abstain, given my proximity to care court issues generally.
Gonzalez,
Yes.
Huang,
Yes.
Iskin, King,
Yes.
Pine, Cruz, Dlee,
Yes.
Mahoney,
Yes.
Milron,
Yes.
Morales,
Yes.
Pryor,
Yes.
Sandville,
Yes.
Vargas, Al-Saraf. Al-Saraf, Amin, are you there? Connolly?
I'm sorry, yes.
Oh, thank you. Connolly?
Yes.
14 yes, 0 no's, and 1 abstention. Motion passes.
Great. Okay, we're a little bit ahead of schedule. So actually, since we've been going a little over an hour and a half, I was thinking I could give everyone a 5-minute bio break. So can you all be back at 1:40? And then this way we can, just people can take a break because we have a long meeting today. So, and thank you to staff for moving things along so that we can have a bio break. All right, see you all back in about 5 minutes. Okay, it's about 1:40. Hopefully folks are making their way back in.
Erica, I may need to just step out for about 5 minutes if I get a phone call, but I'll be back after that, just as a heads up.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Thank you. All right. Looks like we have most people back. Here we go. Okay. All right, why don't we get started on the last one of section 4, which is about approving 2024 IOLTA reporting requirements, and I'll turn that over to Crystal.
Thanks, Erica. Good afternoon. This is going to be item 4.6, approve 2024 IOLTA reporting requirements. So I wanted to take the first half of this presentation just to provide some background and context for the commission, also sharing grantee feedback received and updated staff recommendations. So just as a reminder, on August 10th, the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission approved the following resolution. This resolution I won't read out loud, but was related to the significant increase in the 2024 IOLTA funds, allowed for a flexible 4-year spending period. And also another notable change was that expenditure reporting shifted from quarterly basis to a semi-annual basis. In consideration of such a significant increase in funding, the Commission also expressed interest in gathering additional data from grantees to understand the impact of IOLTA funds. There was some acknowledgement that not IOLTA funds are spent on civil legal services or specific program work. I think the Commission had expressed it would be an important accountability measure to have more concrete and quantifiable data about the use of IOLTA monies. I'll also provide some overview of our reporting just for some context and other things that the staff had considered in looking at potential 2024 IOLTA reporting. Our reporting currently is split into two different types. We have our annual legal aid reports, which include our case summary report, our main and economic benefits report, as well as the impact litigation and advocacy work report. One notable thing about the legal aid reports is that this collects evaluative information for an organization across all funding sources. So this would include both state bar and non-state bar funding. In addition, grantees are also subject to specific state bar grant reporting, depending on the grants that they received. They're listed below, but we have IOLTA for their expenditures reporting, EAF, partnership grant, homelessness prevention, et cetera. Grantees who receive these grants are required to submit relevant services and expenditure information outlined by the relevant state or federal grant requirements. And then we also have applicable resources such as the California Legal Aid Reporting Handbook and administrative calendar, just to remind grantees of deadlines and those specific requirements. So our services data, sort of a bifurcated approach in terms of collecting evaluative information from our grantees. So just at a glance, wanted to provide the landscape of the services data reported and the overlap or not overlap between the different funding sources. So services, the frequency does vary, as you can see here. There's a mix of quarterly and annual reporting, again, due to the subject to the state or federal requirements. And then we have case summary report, which is cases closed. So those are the attorney-client relationships. We have other services, which are the non-representational services, such as hotline calls, self-help clinics and workshops, main and economic benefits, benefits related to those cases closed, as well as support center services. I'll pause just to digest it all, but you can see some grants have required all of the pieces, some require some, and IOLTA obviously will be discussing later on, so TBD on that services portion.
Crystal, could you just briefly say what main economic benefits are, because we have some new commissioners who might not be familiar with that terminology.
Yeah, so main and economic benefits, so that was actually developed by a reboot committee a few years back in terms of how to capture benefits achieved through the different areas of law and the different cases. So in the California Legal Reporting Handbook, it's an extensive list. So there's housing, housing related benefits itemized, and then grantees capture that or have set up their CMS systems to capture relevant benefits achieved. So there's the outcomes, and then there's the economic benefits, which are relevant to some other areas of law, like family law related to settlements or other outcomes that have an economic benefit or component. Okay. If there's no questions, I'll move forward, but happy to go back to any of the slides. So the other piece for evaluative reporting for grantees is the expenditure piece. All grantees are required to report on actual expenditures during in the same line items or as their approved budget. These are in the larger categories of personnel, non-personnel, and administrative. They can be during the grant period or at the conclusion of the grant period, but expenditure reporting remains the same. At the end of each grant period, grantees are required to reconcile all of their grant expenditures and determine if any unspent funds may be returned to the state bar. And then in some instances, when a carryover period is permitted by their grant, you have all seen this request earlier this meeting. Those requests are submitted for consideration by the relevant committee and then the commission. Again, just an overview of the expenditure reporting, looking across all of our grants in terms of the frequency and whether or not budget revisions are permitted or carryovers are permitted. You'll see the update for the 2024 IOLTA that expenditure reporting is now semi-annual. EAF remains as quarterly. Okay, so I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I think Jacqueline had primed the commission pretty well for this. I'm going to segue this and preview. I think some commissioners may have seen this fact sheet in prior meetings, but this is our homelessness prevention impact fact sheet that staff has put together. This was the original intention was to help provide to the Legal Aid Association of California as they advocate for additional HP funds with legislature. I think also realizing after seeing the information put together and packaged in a way, we also sort of identified it's a really great way to see the impact of a certain funding, especially what HP, because there's been several tranches over an extended time period. So I think one of the goals is to create grant-specific fact sheets highlighting data points, outcomes, et cetera, from our other funding sources. We have a lot of grants that we administer, so this was just a sort of a catalyst for that. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on here. We'll explore the data together, so apologies if this is sort of a rehash of what you've heard before. So the very first piece page 1, which is on the left-hand side, wanted to show sort of visually the tranches of the HP funding received, how long those time periods were, the amount of funding that was administered, the number of grants that were administered. The white piece, I will say for the reporting information that we have a lot of data, but we don't have all of the reporting data because some grants are still active, some grants we don't have. We're still missing a couple of maybe a year or so worth of data. So these numbers will increase once we get the full set of information. So the biggest point for the first graphic was just to illustrate that HP funding ends in 2024 and there is no other HP funding following that. Oh, Patience has her hand up.
So all of this data is basically reflects closed cases, right?
No, it's actually the whole HP funding from that sort of overview. There's closed cases, other services, which is that non-representational legal services. Yeah, so
what I'm sorry, what I'm trying to get at is that if a program undertakes an impact case that takes more than, it doesn't get resolved within a year, it doesn't show up as a closed case, its benefits, which if you win you're talking about potentially thousands of benefited client eligible people and families. So there's no way to capture that I was ever able to figure out when I was in a field program, and that I still am not seeing. And it kind of doesn't exist if we don't measure it. And the way I know there's a bigger question than we're going to resolve today, but I just want to lift this up because it is really important. What the state bar decides to measure is essentially, it disincentivizes impact work. And that's really not okay. I mean, I know that the avenues that remain to legal aid lawyers to create significant impact are, they were politically constrained for reasons we all can understand. But to the extent it's still possible, it would be really good if the data collection process could somehow gauge the energy and the grant funding that goes into supporting that impact work and give it, somehow reveal its value. So I'm just saying that it's a little bit metaphysical for what we're doing right now. I understand that, but it's really an important, it's something that we need to grapple with. So thank you for letting me have my say.
Thank you, Patience. Dawn?
I was going to say, I totally agree with that, Patience. And there is a slide later on that Crystal's going to present that's going to show you like some of the next steps. One of the things that we do want to do is really revisit the entire framework of our data collection, each grant painstakingly, each data point, and then really take a step back and think about like, how are we measuring impact? Because I think you're right. There are areas that we do a really good job, and there are areas that are wholly inadequate. And we collected a lot of information. We utilize it in a very small way. So I think we need to ask as a commission and the staff, like, if we're actually really not utilizing those data points, is it really necessary? And maybe we drop it off, or if it is necessary, then I think we need to do a better job kind of aggregating it and highlighting it, letting it drive policy. But I 100% agree with what you say. This fact sheet, I think what Crystal's trying to illustrate is like, we want to move towards even having something like this that's a little bit more visible, because there, I don't know if you read as thoroughly on the report side, down below on our agenda item, there are some reports that we included in there that we kind of remitted to the legislature about HP funding. They're really dense. So we're trying to move, I mean, we have to do those because there are contractual obligations, some of them are statutory requirements. So we still need to do that, but we definitely want to do a little bit more. And Crystal's showing you this as an example of like one attempt of trying to like lift up kind of the work that we do with certain grants. But recognizing, I take your point, Patience, even this fact sheet doesn't quite capture 100% the totality of the impact of the work that we're doing. But again, it's our one, I wouldn't say one of our first attempts to at least even try to make it more visual. It's definitely more digestible than if you had read the other 30-page report. That's very dense, a lot of footnotes. I mean, it's a technical report, right? We need it. But we also, I think, need to do stuff like this to kind of uplift the work of our community. So I think that's what Crystal was trying to, as an example of where we're trying to go with the data.
Thanks, Dawn. I'll just finish walking through the fact sheet if folks haven't had a time to take a look. Also highlighting the number of legal problems addressed, 52,008, assisting over 110,000 in people in households, and then the economic benefits that I mentioned earlier rolled up total 18.8 million saved and 18.6 recovered for clients. We also wanted to highlight the pie chart on the top left. Just I think the assumption is all of the benefits would be towards housing, and while that is true for the majority, I also wanted to share the other areas of law, just indicating that there is intersectionality with other areas of law when trying to assist people with homelessness prevention related type issues. Non-representation legal services, those are the numbers for the hotline calls, workshop, trainings, outreach events, self-representation clinics across grants. And then we also wanted to highlight the client demographics. I think to Patient's point, I think this is again pulled from the closed cases information that was reported. Rural, just to highlight, that was a statutory reference for some of the HP grants. So that's a highlighted group, including, and we included seniors, persons with disabilities, veterans, persons with limited English proficiency, comparing to the California population. And then for more disaggregated information, clients served below race and ethnicity categories, and then gender identity categories as well. Okay, any questions about the fact sheet, or not? I can move forward. Okay, thank you. So a couple of considerations when thinking about the IOLTA framework, IOLTA reporting. So currently, as a reminder, under existing reporting requirements, grantees are only required to report on IOLTA expenditures. There's no requirement to report on services or any other evaluative information specific to IOLTA grants. We did want to acknowledge that IOLTA is sort of indirectly referenced in the legal aid evaluation reports, which again is across all state bar and non-state bar funding sources. IOLTA funds are less restrictive than the other state bar grants, not tied to a certain set of activities or projects. And then just as a reminder, at the February 2 strategic planning session, the Commission expressed interest in having more concerted efforts using evaluation data to measure the impact of funds in order to identify opportunities to better align need with funding, increasing accountability and transparency. Included an excerpt about the IOLTA statute, again, for the intention of IOLTA funds to expand availability, improve the quality of existing free legal services, and initiate new programs that will provide services to them. So I'll share the initial staff recommendations, grantee feedback, and as well as the updated one. So we're thinking about the IOLTA reporting and our current framework. So the initial staff initially was going to recommend developing specific evaluation questions to capture services and the use of IOLTA grant funds where feasible, leveraging similar questions as the existing grant reporting for easier completion and hopefully data comparison across grants. The bullet points are just some data points that we would have recommended to assess out and get additional information. In terms of the reporting period, initially we were going to recommend that this IOLTA evaluation be reported on an annual basis, and understanding that this would be a large undertaking for the grantees. The other recommendation we were considering was to phase out the legal aid evaluation reports, just to swap and the burden or sort of the administrative load that would take and balancing that out. And then we would plan to analyze and present on the IOLTA evaluation results to the Commission and the legal aid community. So that was staff's initial recommendations going in. And this would be an example of a question used, the use of IOLTA funds, again, understanding the flexibility and the different uses. So an example of what that question would look like. And then I'll skip forward to the grantee feedback session. This was part of a larger evaluation workshop held on March 7th. huge attendance. We had over 138 grantees. So assuming that multiple staff members from grantee or 110 grantee organizations attended is a very high outcome. Surprisingly, we talked about the legal aid evaluation reports and sort of that initial proposal. Grantees were not in favor of that. They did not want to phase up the legal aid evaluation reports. I think that they said that for their own organization, it's a helpful way for them to track their organization's work. Grantee had also provided feedback that the ability to report across programs allows for maximum results achieved on the aggregate. Only reporting IOLTA could reduce the reporting and the benefits. And then another feedback was that it would be difficult to quantify and track IOLTA related outcomes because of the way IOLTA is used in the organizations. In practice, few cases are tagged as IOLTA specific. Grantees often use IOLTA to fill in Patrick funding or for their own general operating. And then some use IOLTA to supplement programs that have very strict funder limitations, which would prevent them from reporting program-related outcomes partially funded by IOLTA. So I think for those outcomes, those are strictly tied to be reported under the funder. And then I think a key thing to highlight was that one of the most valuable aspects of IOLTA, its flexibility. Adding specific reporting could negatively impact the way IOLTA is used by grantees, and then grantees would then view it more like restricted funding if we were to implement reporting requirements. I'll pause here. It's a stark contrast to the initial staff recommendations and grantee feedback. If there's any questions.
Jacqueline?
Oh, I just wanted to say that I really like this report. Great report, Crystal. A lot of appreciation to you and all the staff involved, and especially this grantee evaluation workshop. That really is very helpful to see because I've, was wondering about that, and it's great to see these outcomes. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll move forward. So in consideration of the grantee feedback, I think overwhelming support of maintaining and keeping the legal aid evaluation reporting and sort of that structure, that's the staff recommendation. And then in terms specific to the 2024, just because there's a lot to take into consideration for the time being, staff's updated recommendation is not to require IOLTA specific outcome reporting. As a note, they'll still continue to report expenditures on a semi-annual basis. And then the third point for the staff recommendation is to sort of shift gears and sort of focus more on what a reasonable, achievable reporting framework would be by engaging with grantees and stakeholders and doing additional research. Any questions? And I'll just share next steps. We have a resolution for the last page, but I'll just share what the next steps would look like.
So Patience had her hand up. I think she can't.
Sorry, I have limited view of who I can see. Thanks.
Sorry. I just want to say I'm really, really glad that for 2024, there won't be IOLTA specific outcome reporting. That doesn't mean it's off the table entirely, but before you come up with a recommendation, it looks like there'll be really robust input from the users on the ground. And I just want to point out that once it's like everything, right? Once you start, what you measure in some sense defines the purpose of what you're doing, even if the purpose in the grant application is different from what your evaluation questions are. The evaluation questions really govern. And IOLTA funding is such a blessing in all the ways it can flow into all the little nooks and crannies that you just don't have a penny to cover. And I would hate to see that be that function of keeping the place running. I would hate to see that impaired. So I'm glad, the grantees will have a lot to say about that. LAC will be an invaluable source of information and guidance. So, but I very much appreciate that you're going to take the time to think about it and research it and give feedback before you make any changes. Thank you.
Thanks, Patience.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, other comments? I mean, one thing I'll just say, you know, while I appreciate staff's recommendation for this year, and it makes a lot of sense. I do want us to just engage on this. I do think it's worth talking about because I think, you know, at our strategic session in January, you know, one of the themes that we really highlighted was being able to tell our story, right? And using sort of the data to show the way in which the funds that we administer are quite important and why they are so valuable for the community. And obviously we don't, you know, we want to talk with our constituents about that and what's the way to do that in a way that is not overly burdensome, right? Because we want them to, you know, we want the money to be going out to direct services, but to the extent that we can find a way to not be overly burdensome while also getting at some of that information, I would like us to at least explore whether that's possible. And to work and to sort of talk and go through, talk with the organizations about whether there's a way that we can go forward on this. So I just wanted to echo that because you know, I think Crystal's that fact sheet, that info sheet was like, just first off, amazing work. Great job. I can't believe you took a 30-page report, collapsed it down in this visually engaging, very informative way. So, and to the extent that like, we could do that with a lot of our data and have it on ongoing and have a dynamic website that sort of, you know, gets to show the way in which, you know, our organizations are able to use this and there's a real impact, and that makes it helpful when we are, or our, you know, Selena and other folks are advocating for additional funds or additional grants. So I think it makes sense for us to kind of take an interim step on this, but I do think it's good to my view is it's good for us to at least engage going forward to see where the path forward might be. Dawn?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I agree with that. Just kind of tying it back to our strategic planning meeting. I know that this seems like this is like a priority for the commission, and it certainly is for the staff too. And I will say, like, you know, about 6-7 years ago, we engaged in a really intensive process to redo our like outcomes data collection. I mean, previous to that, we were collecting what we call widgets in terms of like activities done, like, you know, how many cases we closed. And then we started collecting at the outcome level. That's the main like dramatic difference, I would say, with our main and economic benefits is that at the moment a case is closed, what was the outcome that was achieved? I would say that there's been a lot of movement in terms of data collection in the last 5-10 years to go even beyond there and really try to measure like outcomes. Like, this is why economic outcomes are important, but like measuring it beyond kind of the case is closed, like the return on investment and all. There's just been a lot of movement. So I think what we the staff is going to want to like just kind of visit all those frameworks and see if there's like, does our existing framework work, or do we need to actually dramatically change it and think about it a little bit different? And I know that the reporting is a lot of work for programs, so we do want to be responsive in that. And I think that's why the staff recommendation is so that we can engage in it. And I wonder if there is a way that we could take on a little bit of the heavier lift versus programs. So it may be more like longitudinal studies in terms of like, not just the cases closed, but maybe perhaps the state bar and the commission can take on like smaller studies, and then we can extrapolate from there. Maybe follow a couple, some clients in certain counties and specific kind of issue areas, and then we can kind of calculate some type of return on investment. A lot of other funders are doing this, other state agencies are doing this. We started to kind of talk with LAC and Selena. They have an evaluations person that's really interested. So I think this does open up an opportunity. So again, I totally agree with you, Erica, that there probably should be some type of element of evaluations for IOLTA, since it is for our newer commissioners. This is our kind of our bread and butter, our flagship. This is the grant that kind of started our program. But at the same time, we do need to balance it with like, it's a heavy lift for programs. And so we want to take a little bit more time. We will come back to you with a framework, and then we will continue to engage this, because this is an area opportunity, but it is certainly a heavy lift if we're gonna overhaul kind of what we have right now.
That's great. Yeah. And the more that we can be creative about that, I think that's really exciting. And, you know, I would encourage commissioners who have a particular interest in this and have thoughts on it to, you know, communicate with staff and let them know if you have thoughts and ideas on it. You know, because that, and Dwan, if you guys decide you need like a working group or something like that, you know.
Oh, yes, we do. And I think Crystal's gonna have an ask right now on this slide. For
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, yes.
I'm probably jumping the gun. Anyway, so thank you. Okay. Yes. So what do we need to do? What's our next steps on this?
So for next steps for this year, if the commission is in agreement, we'll, again, I've mentioned, do that deep dive of research. We're going to be conducting, we can conduct an analysis of legal aid in California, taking a look at our state bar funded grants, legal aid organizations, organizations providing legal aid type services, which may be beyond our current state bar grantee organizations. Also taking a look at the legal aid data collected so far, and then reporting back to you all, highlighting any trends and our assessment of the impact of services provided. And then this piece, thank you, Erica. We are also going to be convening a legal aid evaluations working group comprised of current grantee organizations, Judicial Counsel, LAC, and then my call to action for you all is if any folks are interested in terms of providing the commission perspective. I think we have a running list of about 20 in the working group so far. So I'm happy to add a few more commissioners to that. And then taking all of that information, potentially the last step is developing and recommending a potential IOLTA, potentially maybe overhaul of our evaluation framework in 2025 or a future grant year.
And that working group is going to be looking at all of our reporting requirements across all, not just IOLTA, just to be clear. So we'd love like 2 or 3 commissioners, if you have kind of a data like background, if you've worked in this, even if it's not legal aid, but in other spaces and like evaluation, that would be really, really helpful.
Great.
And if you don't have that background and you're interested, then that's, we'd still love your participation.
Awesome. Great. This is really exciting. I'm looking forward to kind of seeing the working group come together and come up with a way that we can, you know, balance this. All right. What do you need from us, Crystal? Do you need us to do a resolution?
Yeah, there's a resolution, but just wanted to check first, or unless commissioners want to think about it, if there's any sort of initial interest from the group while I move forward.
Jacqueline, you want your working group volunteers now? Let's get them while it's hot.
I'm interested.
Well,
great.
Thank you so much,
I
Jacqueline.
love this work.
Yeah,
I think your background would be perfect. I know you've done a lot of stuff already in other spaces, so thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Anyone else?
So I'm interested, not because I know anything about or evaluation, but I do have some sense of what it's like to be on the reporting end. And
yeah.
So.
Great. Anyone else?
And you don't have to commit now. If you want to, then just shoot me or Crystal an email and then we'll work it out. Thank you in advance.
Great. How exciting. I can't wait to see.
So the proposed resolution, subject to wordsmithing to the commission, it was just saying I'm not required grantees to report on IOLTA specific outcomes for the 2024 grant year. If there's any additional information or sort of wordsmith edits, I'm happy to make them right now.
I assume you don't need approval to like have this like working group and to start exploring.
No,
okay.
The working group, it doesn't have any authority. They'll be mocking up recommendations for the commission for approval. So yeah.
Okay.
It's not a committee. It's going to be a working group.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Okay, not seeing anything. Do I have a motion?
So move.
I'll second.
Great.
Roll call. Alakani?
Yes.
Ball?
Video at some point.
Yes.
Blakemore? Blakemore?
You might have stepped away from.
Okay. Campbell? Escobedo? Galkin?
Yes.
Gonzalez?
Yes.
Pong?
Yes.
Skin? King?
Yes.
Klein? Cruz? Louis,
Abstain, given my role on the board of an IOLTA grant recipient.
Mahoney,
Yes.
Milrod,
Yes.
Morales,
Yes.
Pryor,
Yes.
Sandville,
Yes.
Vargas, Al-Saraf,
I'll abstain.
Connolly,
Yes.
12 yes, 0 no's, 2 abstentions, motion passes.
Great. Can't wait to see what the working group comes up with. Thank you guys for getting into those tricky waters. And look forward to seeing what we get out of it. All right, now let's start digging into our reports. I think this first one, it comes from Dwan. She's got some updates from her position.
Right. So I'm going to start off. My first update is very good news on IOLTA revenue side. And for our new commissioners, what I provide the commission at every commission meeting is an update on the revenue for our interest on lawyer trust account grants. And you've heard a lot about them already today. Again, like I mentioned, these are kind of like our foundation grant. This is the grant that has started the Legal Services Trust Fund program, the commission. This grant is very important, as you heard already. It provides core funding for our legal aid programs. It's very flexible. A lot of programs use it for, operations. And so it's pivotal. The one thing to keep in mind though, by IOLTA funding, because it tracks, what it is by statute, it requires attorneys to put into interest-bearing accounts, client trusts that are nominal and short-term, and there's a really specific definition of what that is. And then it allows the state bar to collect those remittances, and then we distribute them as our legal aid grants. But because they track interest rates, they're very volatile, right? Right now, we're in a very good kind of interest environment. Interests are still very high. So in these times, it's good. But, when interest rates are low, as they were at the beginning of the pandemic, our revenue is lower. So one of the things that the commission, one of the very important functions that the commission does every year is June of every year, the commission decides on what's going to be the grant distribution for IOLTA for the following year. The commission at the June meeting has a very extensive, we spend about, I want to say, usually an hour or half that meeting talking about various options, market conditions, staff prepare kind of projections, and then we come up with a recommendation, we send it to the Board of Trustees, and then thereafter, the staff is also along during that process reviewing grant applications, and then we release budgets, and then we release grant agreements, and then the grant takes effect in the following year. But because it's such core funding, it is it's a big responsibility that the commission undertakes. So to that end, at every quarter, I provide a revenue update. The last couple, I would say the last year and a half, the revenue has been really great. At the beginning of the pandemic, we dropped almost immediately in terms of interest rates. We went from about 2.5% at that time to really near zero. I think we were like at 0.25%. It dropped overnight. Our revenue doesn't always, like, once interest rates drop immediately, it doesn't there's a little bit of a lag time, because then banks have to go kind of drop it. It doesn't like automatically happen, but there's a correlation. Sometimes the drop it's a little bit of a slower decline. Luckily, during the pandemic and when it dropped, the deposits, so the amount of money within kind of that banks were holding, were still really high. So even though the interest rates dropped very low, we were still able to yield kind of very large, I would say, larger than anticipated kind of revenue for the year. There are a lot of people that are on this commission that will remember, because they've been on the commission for quite some time now. The Great Recession, revenue dropped really low, and we were distributing grants in the $5 to $10 million. So when you hear these kind of big numbers, I'm going to reveal soon, it's like a dramatic difference. So if you've been following what's been on the news, the Feds met really recently. They still have not cut rates, so we're above 5% now. They have indicated, and I will turn to my two bankers, Jeff and Tammy, who are together. They have indicated that at some point this year, interest rates will start to drop, and so we have built them into our kind of projections. Last year, when we built into our projection, we actually thought they were going to drop about by December a whole percentage point. I don't think that's actually going to. We don't think that's actually going to play out anymore, given the fact that they have yet to drop. But this is the thing: it's a projection, it's a forecast. We follow what we can, but then we look to our bankers to see if there's anything like dramatic, like what we're saying is correct. But I'll just say that the revenue is still very strong. We have now closed out the books for 2023, and we have about just shy of $180 million. And let me just pull up my notes close to $190 million. So around this time last year, in June of last year, you had all projected revenue of about 117 million. So our revenue has increased. I mean, that's about $73 million there. So it's great. We're wildly off. So I'll just make that recognition. Like $73 million, our projections are wildly off, but in a very good way. Related to that, the commission did pass a new reserve policy recently that went into effect that says that we used to use a formula that kind of projects into the future and takes that into account of what our distribution is. We've overhauled that reserve policy, and now what we do is we take into account like what we have in terms of in our bank account once we close our books, and then we use that as a baseline, and then the commission can put into reserve cash on hand up to $25 million if they feel like that's necessary or revenue is really high. So with $190 million, if the commission then chooses to decide to do that max $125 million in June, we're looking at still more than $150 million distribution. Just to put that in context, for this year, the distribution was $95 million. And then put that in context one more time. Like I said, the last Great Recession we had, we were distributing less than 10 million. So this program has it's been dramatic growth. There's a couple of things that account from that. Like I mentioned, there are IOLTA deposits. The net deposits in California have remained not just really high, they have still continued to grow. We have theories on why that's happening, but nobody really knows. Other states, their deposits have either flattened or have decreased. So it's a really good environment for us to be in high interest rates plus high net deposits. That is really what's contributing to these kind of really blockbuster kind of numbers. The one thing though, I would like to say to the commission to keep in mind though, like our revenue stream is good, but I would say almost across the board, everything else is not good. I mean, Selena might be able to speak to this a little bit. There's been a lot of cuts in federal funding. As you know, the state budget is not doing well this year. Selena, the LAC is trying to advocate for more homelessness prevention money, but given the state of the state budget, we don't know how likely that is. So if that doesn't come through in some small amount, like Crystal shared earlier, there will be a funding cliff at the end of 2024. All our tranches of HP grant are going to disappear. So though it's good news in terms of IOLTA, programs are going to have to use our IOLTA funding, and it's good that our IOLTA funding is so flexible to kind of, cover the shortfall for the other pieces of grants that are lost. The market is good, so foundation funding, hopefully is good. That's something that I'll try to do a little bit more research by the time we go into the June meeting to give you a little bit more of analysis for that. I don't have anything concrete. That's just our anecdotal thinking that if market is good, foundation funding might be good, but that might be a different story. So that's all to say in June, you'll come with we'll have a drafted memo for you to review that will lay out kind of, what all these numbers mean, where our projections are. It'll come with a recommendation. I'll do a little bit more research on kind of other funding streams and include that in the memo in the presentation. But I'll just pause there and see if there are any kind of questions. And Selena has her hand up. She might be able to.
Yeah, I was just going to give a little bit of context that you referenced on, is that this is amazing. Like, I remember the year that revenue was about $5 million. I remember when organizations closed their doors because when IOLTA dropped and there was no other sources of funding, they simply could not keep open. Many organizations had furloughs. It was a really terrible time. And that's why so much of LAC's work has been not only to increase Equal Access Fund, but also to shore up other sources of funding so that we would be able to weather, future potential storms. But as Dwan said, we have lost a lot of core sources of funding for legal aid in California. I just wanted to highlight those because even though we celebrate the large IOLTA award and what will be a banner year next year, guys, shh. Sorry, my kids do not have school today. Is that, these are all formula awards. And so some organizations have a very large formula grant, and other organizations, especially in large counties where there are several providers, they don't have very large formula grants. So even when we talk about these huge increases in dollar amounts, some of those organizations will still lose money because the VOCA grants, there was a significant cut to Victims of Crime Act. Guys, shh, I'm sorry. There's a significant cut to Victims of Crime Act federal funding, and several organizations that have had funding for the last 10 years or so, they will not get new funding when those grants end. And I've heard of, concerns about backfilling, concerns about potential layoffs. With the loss of HP funding, many organizations receive competitive grants for both HP4 and HP3. And so that means that those organizations which have quite small IOLTA formula grants will lose a ton of HP funds. There's also, of course, I can't read my own writing, COVID-related funding. Many organizations had one-time COVID-related funding, including even the tax offset, that a lot of organizations are still using those funds now that will be no longer available very soon. And then Equal Access Fund. We got a one-time Equal Access Fund award that was quite large, of the $70 million award a couple of years ago, and that was directly related to COVID opportunities. And so that funding is now gone. And then the last thing that doesn't impact all the organizations, but impacts a few, is that there is state funding for immigration legal services that was cut significantly in the current state budget. So those organizations that provide certain immigration services, unless the state backfills some of the loss, there'll be a significant loss of funding in that area. So I celebrate, as much as any of you, this increase in IOLTA, but not every organization will benefit equally. And as Juan referenced, there are some potential cuts to foundation funding because of worry about stock market volatility. And so just don't expect organizations to do a whole bunch more next year, because there may be an actual loss in their funding from other sources.
And Jeff and Tammy, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you have any thoughts on like kind of market conditions or anything you can share?
Well, first, I was waiting for the thank you, so you're welcome. But I think
you.
What you guys said in regards to the interest rate forecast, we would agree with. We still have an inverted yield curve, and without getting overcomplicated, that suggests that the market is anticipating some reduction in short-term rates. It's influenced by two things. It's influenced by the overnight rate that's set by the Federal Reserve, which is what many people focus on. It's also driven by the size of the Fed balance sheet, which people talk less about. And so a lot of this has been the fact that our rates have stayed high a bit is attributable more to the balance sheet. I think as I look at the fact of our forecasting, Dewan, and I always like to miss low on things like this. I think it's better to be practical and let's be surprised to the positive and not the negative. But you mentioned it, it's the volume. It's the size of these deposits that we were not anticipating, which really created the difference between what we forecasted and what we ended up receiving. And of course, that's dependent upon the legal community and the caseload. And as we all know, the courts have been very slow, even coming out of the pandemic. And so that could be attributed, not that I'm encouraging slow legal process here, but that could be part of what has kept some of the balances higher than what we expected. So I think as we think about variability, I think in the next year, it's going to be more dependent upon what that volume is and less on rate change.
Thank you. And the other thing I'll say that, I think all the programs welcome it. It's still very difficult though when there are like these dramatic swings, even though the swings are up, which is a great news, but it's hard for programs to kind of absorb it. So one thing that the commission did last year when we had a large distribution, the 95 million, was you all approved a 3-year spend down. The staff is moving towards that recommendation because it is going to be such a large distribution again. We will probably go back out to programs to see whether that 3-year, this year was 3 years, whether that 3-year is about kind of the right amount. And then we'll come up with a firmer, again, recommendation and more detailed. But I just wanted to give you a preview that that's the direction that, we will most likely go in. It's a multi-year just because the distribution is so high. The challenge for programs is they're overlapping grants, right? And so there's tracking for that's overlapping with all of our others. So that's something that we will try to provide that technical assistance for programs. I mean, it's hard, right, to track overlapping grants and then with the layered on like difficulty of the volatility of interest rates and how do they budget. So we recognize, and I think that's across the board. It's not just small programs and medium-sized programs that struggle with that. Actually do get a lot of phone calls from even big-sized programs that are like, you know, how do we even project because the swings are so large. So
and I think
yeah,
part of it, Dewan, and for the newer commissioners, you'll experience this when we get into June. We have a trade-off here between paying out based on what we receive and trying to smooth it out a bit. And as we were going through some of these excess numbers that we were dealing with at the beginning of the meeting, you know, there's always the concern of having too much, either from the standpoint of volatility or that the programs truly have a way to spend the money, because I have always been a fan of trying to smooth it out because I think it helps them work more efficiently and it provides better protection for those down years. And often those can come very unexpected with, we're talking about things that we don't really have control over. And so as we get into June, you know, we're very fortunate that we're dealing with funds that are in excess of what we've anticipated, but we really have to think about the smoothing out effect because, as we all know, things can change very quickly. And we want to make sure that these programs can stay funded and at least providing a minimal level of the services that are so important. And that's why we're all here. And we understand that on the bank side. And I talked to many different banks. I think there's growing awareness of these programs and their importance, but also important for all of us to recognize that the banks are under a severe amount of stress right now, particularly when it comes into their cost of funds. So I appreciate that Tammy and I have an opportunity to serve here and be able to provide different perspectives.
Thank you. So my next update is, you know, the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission, our office is subject, and the State Bar, to many audits. So we're actually right now undergoing 5 concurrent audits, and I just want to run through them. And then as they conclude, you'll get a report and a copy of them, hopefully in June. By June, a lot of them will actually close. So let me just run through them just so that you're aware. The first is the state of California is doing their single audit, and because we receive federal fundings, we are also getting audited through that audit from the state. The state of California is also doing a preemptive audit because I can't remember whether they've been officially notified or they're just preemptively preparing to be audited by the federal government because of the money that's coming through to California. So as part of that preemptive audit, they're auditing the Judicial Council, and because the money flows to the State Bar, we are also getting a piece of that audit too. As you recall, there was a requirement that was added to statute a couple years ago when the commission got codified that required the State Bar to audit the commission's kind of decision-making to make sure that the commission was in compliance with rules and policies and governing authorities. So we have actually hired an outside firm, Ernst & Young, to do that audit. It's a very extensive audit. It's inclusive of all of our grant making, all of their processes. It's very heavy. What I have said to Ernst & Young, though, we kind of welcome this opportunity because we actually haven't had this type of intensive audit for the commission, and we distribute such a large amount of money that we want to use it. We want to use it as a tool, right? So if there are things that they recommend that come to light, we will have extensive discussions about that. Or if there are findings that end up coming out from it, we will have an extensive discussion of that. So I just wanted to give you a highlight because they've told us our grant making is so extensive and so many tranches. What they will be recommending is kind of this to be done in like a multi-phase kind of a thing. Where they're drafting up a recommendation letter right now that we're actually going to remit to the legislature and how they plan to do the audit. So right now they're reviewing all of our processes and they're going to determine like which grants are like high risk, which grants or how they would do a sampling for this year versus next year versus like 3 years out. So it's not to say that everything is getting audited in one swoop, but they create the ordering from us and the justification and the plan We'll share that. It's actually going to, our commission doesn't have to approve that, but it's going to be agendized for the State Bar Board of Trustees Audit Committee to approve that plan. And then if that's approved, then it will send it to the legislature to make sure everybody's comfortable with that. But I will share that with you at the next commission meeting, and then we'll go from there. The other audit that we have, sorry to turn to my notes. We also have a financial statements audit. That's a statutory requirement that just started. And then we have our own single audit, the State Bar, our own single audit that's triggered by the homelessness prevention and the CalFHA grants that we received our federal funding. So the staff is and our fiscal team is taking, I would say, the lion's share of this work. And then we have program staff that are being called in, like Jennifer is on a lot of these communications with the state auditor's office, because a lot of it is questions related to HP grants. So again, it's quite intensive. If you've been through an audit before, you can imagine, but times 5. I mean, I think I'm not exaggerating when I say every day we get a set of questions and document requests that we have to turn over and make sure that, you know, everything's good before we send it on. So any questions about the audit? It's what did you say, Jeff?
I said, welcome to our world.
Yeah, yes. It's I mean, I always knew we had a lot of documents, but going through this process again 5 times over is really it's revealing. So any questions on the audits? Again, once they come through, we will either send it or agendize it for a commission meeting so that you're all kept up to date. Okay. My next update is the State Bar issued a diversity report card. And as you all know, the staff of the Office of Access and Inclusion, we staff your commission, but we also staff the Council on Access and Fairness, which takes on initiatives and priorities to kind of increase diversity within the legal profession. And so our office works with kind of our Office of Research and Statistics to kind of release this report. It's a really great report. I will send it to you all after the meeting, a link to that so you can take a look. And then my last update is we did not agendize something that needed to be approved, our partnership grant RFP. So we're going to have to agendize it, I think, after we've released the RFP. It's already been reviewed by the committee. There's nothing substantive changes. I don't think it's going to be controversial, but we are doing a little bit out of process. So you will see that agendized for the June meeting. And that's all the updates I have. I'll turn it back over to you, Erica, unless there are commissioners that have questions.
Any questions? One thing that I did want to just update us on while we're kind of going through updates is something that Amin and I had sort of discussed at the last XCOM meeting, which is this potential amendment to the Trust Fund Commission statute, and particularly BMP Code 6033. And the potential amendment that we're like very excited about is basically would allow us to take, we get a certain amount of money that comes in from, in addition to the IOLTA funds that comes in through like attorney contributions. Some of that has gone to some legal, to our legal professionals, fellowships. And then some of it we've used it has generally come in and been part of sort of IOLTA funding to help supplement during those years in which the money was significantly lower from the IOLTA interests. And so one of the things that we have been thinking about in an effort to sort of be more helpful and responsive to the organizations when like kind of emergencies or disasters or something really kind of significant comes up, is to potentially kind of create a pot of money that we can then sort of take from that, we would be able to kind of deploy in a much more sort of needs-based way. We're really excited about it. Wanted to just share with you guys. We had approved it at the XCOM meeting, and or approved, basically said like, we support it. We think it's a really great idea. And we're really excited to kind of work with the various legal service organizations to see sort of what their needs are and how we can be most responsive to them. I mean, that's sort of the whole goal of this, is to give us an opportunity to be reactive to what they need. And so we just want to I wanted to share that with the group. I think this is very consistent with a lot of the things that we're thinking about with our strategic goal, and in an effort to sort of be a little bit, you know, be more sort of thoughtful and engaging with how we dispense funds in an effort to help the community as best we can. Angie, you have a question?
But how much are we talking about in broad terms?
So I think the rough number, and Selena, you can totally correct me if I'm getting this wrong, but it sort of depends on what the opt-in and opt-out is. But we're looking at around sort of $5 to $7 million. So
yeah, between $5 and $8 million for I'll say for 2023 was $6.5 million. What that was the total for there. And there's a couple components to that I can share with you. So there's and I always get confused. I always turn to Selena and Elizabeth at this part. There's an opt-in and there's an opt-out. One is $100 and one is $45. There's also, as you know, our legal fellowship, legal leaders fellowship. That there's $5 of the $45 opt-in is diverted to that. For this year, we're actually asking to expand that $5 to $10. That seems, I think, a not controversial ask. Programs seem to welcome that. But then there's also this $100. And then through the year, there's also volunteer contributions of what we call the Justice Gap that we get that goes into that fund. So it's somewhat hard to predict. It is pretty reliable, though, that it is between $5 and $8 million. But because it's based on contributions, you know, it's hard to say.
Yeah. And then one other thing I'll just say, and then Selena, I'd love to hear your views on this too, is just, you know, in years when the IOLTA funds are low, we have discretion to just do as we're doing now, which is put that money into IOLTA funds to, like, you know, make sure that that's going out. It's just more like in these spaces where we have lots of money, if there's ways in which we can deploy it, you know, most effectively. That was sort of the thinking behind it. Selena, go ahead.
Well, just on the issue of the amount, that if we think about the whole amount being 6 million or so, and we carve out some of it for the law student summer funding, we carve out additional for law student summer funding next year, which, as Dwan said, I think that's completely uncontroversial. We wholly love the idea of building the pipeline of future attorneys for the entire community. It makes a huge difference when students are paid for their labor. But I mean, I'm actually thinking we're going to see a lesser amount next year if the state bar licensing fee increases pretty significantly, as it needs to do for our disciplinary system. I think some more attorneys will opt out of that 45 amount than they have in the past. So even so, when we talk about doubling the amount of law student summer funding, I don't think it's going to be a true doubling, because I think there'll be enough people opting out that it won't be a doubling. So I'm saying like roughly doubling. But then the amount that's left after that is taken out. I don't think will be as robust as in the past, because this is such a significant licensing fee increase.
Yeah, and we're still getting feedback. Selena has been talking to programs to see, you know, what would be responsive to their needs. We might be tightening up some of the language, and we're going through various drafts. The good thing about this is like it's the cycle is a little bit different than kind of the other statutory changes, because it's hooked onto the state bar fee bill, and that doesn't need to get finalized until a little bit later in the year. So it's not on the same kind of timeline as like care court and so forth. So we want to, you know, we'd like it for it to happen this year, but you know, we're working on it. Again, we want to be responsive to community feedback on this one.
Catherine?
I just need a refresher. So the $45 is the opt-in, opt-out, right? And if you don't opt out, that gets added. And then on top of that, there's the ability to make a donation, right, through the bar dues, right?
That's the $100.
Just an amount of like 100, right?
Mm-hmm.
So of the amounts, so is it just one pot of money, no matter how it comes in, and then it gets distributed to the summer interns, et cetera, right? Or is it considered two pots of money?
It's considered two pots, but the summer interns is from that $45. So right now in statute it's $5. So we'd be proposing to change that from $5 to $10. But then the other, it gets pulled in. It's hard to explain. I think if Michael or Elizabeth are on, they can explain to you how what the fund is tagged as.
So,
but that's
yeah, sorry to interrupt you, Dawn. Elizabeth has her hand raised.
oh,
so
okay. Then Elizabeth is probably the best person to explain.
Yeah, maybe Elizabeth can explain.
Hi everyone, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So so Catherine, it's $100 opt-in donation, and when we collect it, it's a separate line item on the licensing fee statement from the $45 opt-out donation, and that's where the fellowship funds come from. And because they're two separate line items on our licensing fee bill, we need to for accounting purposes parse them out separately, but then they are all rolled together into what we call commonly the Justice Gap Fund. Does that answer your question?
It does. I think I was asking the question in part to think through whether the $100 opt-in is likely to, people are just donating money, right?
Yeah.
Is not likely to go down. I understand that, like, you pay more attention to your actual licensing fee if you're not giving that, but it is more like, I guess time will tell. Like,
well, and this Elizabeth might know this. Elizabeth, what's the one that like the law firms they just absorb for their, because I think that's the one that is less likely to go down, because attorneys aren't deciding on that. It's just the law firm picks it up.
Yeah, so and typically that's the $45.
Okay. So the $100, I think maybe to your, I think that's the one that might, if it's the attorney that's deciding where they're going to contribute, they might think about it if the fees are going up.
I think what we've always, I guess my recollection of the $100 part is because the law firms are paying the bills and they're not, like, attorneys just don't even see them, right? And so then if the law firm opts out, it'll affect the 45, but maybe not. But it's not like there's going to be an increase or not. I don't think that's going to affect the big law firm lawyers who aren't seeing their bills now, and maybe there's a different strategy to reach out to people to address their opportunity to participate or something. Anyway.
That's a good idea, Catherine. We could probably do that once the fees are settled. We can definitely do that.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing is, if you all have been keeping up, is the state bar is proposing like fee scaling for if the increase goes through, so that I saw a chart of it at the board presentation. So like nonprofits would pay less than like an attorney at a law firm, right? So then how that comes into play, it's yet to be seen.
Yeah, and I appreciated you somebody sent out a thing about the opportunity to make sure we all understood from what was happening with the fee scaling provision going forward. That was terrific.
Yeah. Are you talking about, there was like an email, right, from Donna for like
forwarded by somebody else, but the email was from Donna, yes, and we could all sign up to different times to have
be aware.
Yeah.
Great point. Good reminder on that. All right. Now I think there's we have some more updates, which of course I'm like missing my agenda. Apologies. Oh yes. Okay. So now let's turn to Jennifer, who's going to give us a report on the bank grant evaluations.
Thank you. Let me share my screen again. Okay, so this is agenda item 5.2, report on the 2016 to 2022 bank grant evaluations. So the State Bar received $50.8 million from Bank of America and Citi as a result of bank settlements with the U.S. Department of Justice due to the 2008, subprime mortgage crisis. And these grants fund foreclosure prevention or community redevelopment legal services. There have been several tranches of funding, as you can see. There have been 5 rounds. This chart lays out the duration of each round of funding, along with the amount and the number of projects. There was also a planning grants round. 74 projects each received $10,000 to engage in a 1-year planning process. So between 2016 and the end of 2022, the commission distributed over $47.5 million in bank grants for 142 multi-year awards, as well as those 74 planning grants. And just before I move forward, so I know that foreclosure prevention is pretty straightforward, but in terms of community redevelopment, that was a little bit broader. One example that I think is really neat was a project for advocacy, legal advocacy about home childcare businesses, which enabled these businesses to maintain their business structure by advocating for legislation to permit childcare centers in homes. So that actually fell under employment law, just to give an example of the diversity of work done. So besides the partnership grants, the bank grants were the first kind of competitive discretionary funds that the Office of Access and Inclusion, the State Bar, distributed. As a result, the reporting process changed. There were, as you can see in the report, which was shared with everyone, there were a lot of intricacies to the reporting process, things that, changed with sometimes different tranches of funding. But we really wanted to highlight the great work that these grants have done. Earlier, we talked about return on investment. So as a refresher, economic benefits refers to financial awards or savings for clients. And in this case, the bank grants recovered $257 million and saved clients $36 million. So economic benefits could be the amount of debt discharged, such as debt discharged to prevent a foreclosure. And then just wanted to touch on client demographics. So the client demographic data that was collected was only about seniors, children, and veterans. And as with all of our reporting, this was not required. So there could be undercounts. On the other hand, organizations could have potentially submitted duplicate counts for individuals. If an individual, for example, a veteran, received multiple main benefits, that would artificially inflate these numbers. But overall, we can see that a lot of veterans, a lot of seniors, and a lot of children were served with these grant dollars. So any questions on this?
I don't see anything. Congrats. So, thank you guys so much for all of the great work on this. And it looks like the bank grants did some really good work. So we appreciate you getting us the data on that.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll just close by saying that the Bank Grants Committee distributed the remaining funds in the form of 10 competitive awards that began on January 1st of 2024. Those are 2-year grants, so they will conclude at the end of 2025. And we'll keep the commission appraised of how that's going.
That's great. And thanks to the Bank Grants Committee and the staff who worked on that. Really appreciative of all the work on that and a good use of funds coming out of some, somewhat unfortunate circumstances. So, all right, great. The next report is also Jennifer, I think, right?
Also me, yes.
Homelessness prevention.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. So this is the report on the Homelessness Prevention 2, 3, and 4 grant annual evaluations. Okay, so really briefly, this chart kind of outlines some important information about reporting requirements and the reporting periods. The data that I'm going to present for you today is for 12 months of HP2, 12 months of HP3, and 6 months for 46 out of 63 of the HP4 grants. That's because there were 2 tranches of HP4 funds. We call them initial and supplemental. And the supplemental grants actually began after the HP4 reporting period for the year. So In total, HP2 was $31 million, which comes to roughly $9.83 million to grantees for the year period that we're discussing. HP3 was $80 million in total. So year 2 was roughly $26 million to grantee, and HP4 was $30 million total, a little over $25 million of which went to the HP4 initial grantees. So for the first 6 months that we're reporting on, that was roughly $8.4 million to grantees. Okay, so we've talked about Maine and economic benefits today a lot, and this slide shows the main benefits and economic benefits achieved for this grant period. I'll note that the majority of the main benefits were in housing law, but there were other areas of law represented. You saw a snapshot of that when Crystal showed the HP impact fact sheet earlier, but some other areas of law to highlight include consumer debt, income maintenance, employment and disability rights, and several others. So just to break it down, close to 23,000 HP needs were addressed for close to 22,000 unique clients. There's a discrepancy between those numbers because some individuals had multiple HP needs addressed by the same organization. And then in terms of economic benefits for this reporting period, $9.6 million were saved, and close to $8.3 million were recovered for clients. Okay, next we'll talk about non-representation legal services, which we often call other services to clients. Other services include things like self-representation clinics, outreach events, workshops and trainings, and hotline calls. And we wanted to break this down into the number of other services held, which was over 2,300, as well as the number of other service participants, which is close to 119,000 people served. Crystal mentioned earlier that for many of the HP grants, projects that served rural and or underserved communities were given preference. So this slide just shows a breakdown of those categories. We have rural, persons with disabilities, seniors age 60 and up, persons with limited English proficiency, and veterans. And we broke that down by the grant as well as in comparison to the California population. And just to note that as we did with the HP impact fact sheet, when we talk about rural here, we included people in rural as well as mixed rural and urban counties. And I think that this graph is really interesting because it shows that there are often really interesting differences between how the grant dollars are used. And if we think about that, one way to think about that is that HP 2 and 3 are both formula and competitive grants, whereas HP 4 funding is exclusively competitive. So we can see some of the differences in demographics by HP needs addressed when we think about those distribution of funds in that way. We also collect data on HP needs addressed by race and ethnicity. Grantees are asked to report demographics, but some do not. HP grants do a good job, as you can see, of serving some underserved races and ethnicities, Black Californians in particular. But other races and ethnicities could definitely benefit from additional HP services when compared to their share of the California population. I see Jason has a hand up.
Yeah, just on the race and ethnicity, is this identified by the person being assisted, or is this observed by the provider?
So we leave that up to the discretion of grantees a little bit, but most of our, I would say, the way that that's done is typically through client intakes, which are often filled out either by the client themselves or with help from staff at a legal services organization. Duan.
I'll say one thing. We're trying to get data that breaks down race and ethnicity by are 200% of federal poverty threshold and below, because that's how we define low income. That data is a little bit hard to get at. We might need to like reach out and like pay a research firm to get that. But I think that data is probably, if we're going to compare a little bit more, like we're doing good in terms of the California population, I would say, but if we compared it to that, it's not going to be as great. And I think that is probably a good comparison mark. So we are trying to get that. And if we do, we'll update some of this information.
Thanks, Dawn. And then the last slide is about gender identity. This is another demographic category that grantees are asked to fill out when they complete their reporting. And as we can see, the HP grants across the board do a good job of serving women in California. Any questions about that?
I'm not seeing any. I will again just say great job, Jennifer, and very exciting to see the sort of information about, again, one of our big grant programs over the last few years. So appreciate you reporting that to us so that we can see kind of the effect that we're able to have.
Thanks.
Great. All right, and then we have another report on our provisionally licensed lawyer grants, and that's back to Chris, right? Okay.
Yes, sorry, I was on mute. All right, for the 2021 through 2022 PLL grants, this is actually a grant that ended some time ago, but has been on the commission's agenda to hear a brief report back on sort of like what the data looked like at the very end for a little while. We kind of like moved to future meetings to create space for more time sensitive things. So if you're thinking to yourself, wow, 2022 is a little while ago, it was, but it actually dovetails really nicely with the conversation about the opt-in, opt-out, because this was the precursor use of some of those funds. Okay. So I suppose the Assembly Bill number is less relevant today, but there was an Assembly Bill number 3362 that became law back in September of 2020. And it increased by $5. And this might have been as far as recent history goes, like the progenitor of the $5 increase that the commission now talks about when it's talking about funding for summer fellows and other purposes. Like this was, I think, the moment where it went, I think maybe from $40 to $45. It was in the opt-out line of the annual license fee statement that the State Bar sends out each year. It increased that by $5. And then the Business Profession Code specified that $5 increase at the time would go to QLSPs and support centers to hire law school graduates with a temporary provisional license issued by the State Bar. So some commissioners may recall that earlier in the pandemic, and this program continued for a couple of years, the State Bar and the State Supreme Court stood up the provisional licensure, the provisionally licensed lawyer program, which would allow law school graduates who met all the other requirements to practice law in California, but had yet to sit for the bar exam, to begin practicing law early in the pandemic when it was much harder to administer the bar exam. Under the supervision of another licensed attorney. They carried what was called a provisional license. So to sort of support those law school graduates who were being supervised, who met all the other requirements to practice law, to support legal aid early in the pandemic, this $5 increase was a clever way to do both of those things. So starting, as you now know, on January 1 of 2023, that $5 increase now supports the Legal Aid Leaders Fellowship grants. But for 2 State Bar fee cycles, it was supporting the provisionally licensed lawyer grants. The full commission delegated to its executive committee at the time authority to make those grants. The executive committee in the spring of 2021 solicited competitive applications and evaluated them for their proposed impact that the PLL would have at the organization and its services. The proposal from the host organization to support its provisionally licensed lawyer, again, this would be somebody who had like just graduated from law school, by providing them with onboarding training and mentorship. The committee looked at the safeguards that the organization proposed to protect the experience of the PLL and the organization's clients. It sought proposals that would competitively describe how they would look at a strong and diverse candidate pool, and then also gave sort of points for what it called special, satisfying one or more special needs, which was focusing on COVID-19 relief for Californians, natural disasters, and/or rural legal aid. The executive committee in the spring or summer of 2021 approved 20 grants. So at the time, the projection for the PLL grant revenue was 1.359 million. 3 of the PLLs would serve every county in the state. 17 of the 20 would, as a group, serve 43 counties, including 30 rural ones. And then 15 PLLs out of 20 would work on one or more of the sort of like special causes: COVID-19 legal aid, natural disaster legal aid, and rural legal aid. The average PLL grant, and this was, again, just to hire a provisionally licensed lawyer, so it was limited to that new staff member, that recent law school graduate's salary, benefits, and payroll taxes. That's what the grant could pay for. The average award was about $68,000. The executive committee decided to fund a couple extra grants and have each grantee try and put a little bit of funding up themselves, but for the PLL grant itself to pay for most of the salary, payroll taxes, and benefits, but for each grantee to put in a little bit of money of their own so it could squeeze out a couple more grants. The organization could say when the provisional licensed lawyer would start and when they would end, but the grants lasted about 12 to 13 months. I'm only going to leave the slide up for just a second, but you can see who the 20 host organizations were. They were qualified legal services projects, qualified support centers. Okay, so data from the final evaluation. So because this grant was a grant for the qualified legal services project or qualified support center, the funding went to them to hire a provisionally licensed lawyer, but the provisionally licensed lawyer's experience was highly important to the executive committee and the commission. There was a final evaluation for the nonprofit that hosted the PLL, and then there was also a final experience survey for the PLL themselves. So I have some data from both. So this data is from the grantee host organization. So you can see just kind of a rough map of California, the number of provisionally licensed lawyers that received this grant to support their salary and benefits. You can see the number that provided services in each county. The grantee organizations could select more than one county for their PLL. So so all the ones at the top of the state, if I remember correctly, is probably from Legal Services of Northern California's provisionally licensed lawyer served, was available to serve all those counties and indeed provided services to those counties. You can see down in Southern California, up to 8 PLLs were providing services in Los Angeles, and then some of the neighboring counties received 2 or 4 PLLs. And sorry, the other thing is there was at least one PLL grantee, it was Legal Access Alameda, whose provisionally licensed lawyer stood up a clinic that was available statewide. And so we left them off so as to kind of show just the counties that besides that didn't really have a PLL that was serving them. The grantees also reported the areas of law that their provisionally licensed lawyers provided services in. And again, they could select more than one area of law. So you can see that housing law had the most provisionally licensed lawyers that the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission funded, providing services, followed by they could select other and specify what that was, but then consumer finance and family domestic violence and so on. So it's actually kind of a nice looking pie chart because it was a pretty good spread of areas of law. They reported on the number of limited scope versus full scope representation cases that the provisionally licensed lawyers assisted with. So limited scope could be as sort of light of a touch point as counsel and advice, but all the way up to helping with things like negotiations or even quite lengthy and complex work that just wasn't full scope. And then full scope is sort of in the commission's reporting scheme is sort of reserved for like helping with all aspects of the client's civil case. So unsurprisingly, I think these new attorneys who were under the supervision of other regularly licensed lawyers focused mostly on limited scope cases. There was one area of law where it was sort of the flip, and actually they focused more on full scope work, and that was immigration. This chart actually shows you the same information, but just for those who like colors and images, it just kind of shows the ratio, the dark blue versus the teal. And you can see the immigration bar is the one where it kind of looks like a 50-50. There's actually more full scope cases there than limited scope. None of the PLLs, though, did full scope representation or limited scope representation, attorney-client relationship work in juvenile law or education law. And then the last data point I have from the grantees themselves, the nonprofits, is did you offer the provisionally licensed lawyer a permanent position, regardless of whether or not they accepted? And there's, it could be for funding reasons that they may or may not have done that. It could have been just sort of like the needs of the clients. But essentially, we were pleased to see that 15 of the grantees did offer their provisionally licensed lawyer a permanent position at the end of that grant, and 5 did not. And then a little bit of data from the experience survey that we administered to the provisionally licensed lawyers themselves. So this is the actual individual who whose salary and benefits were at least partially funded by the grant. We asked them, how would you rate your overall experience at your QLSP or support center? We were happy to see that 16 of them said it was excellent. 2 said very good. 1 said fair. No one responded poor or very bad. And we had 1 that didn't respond. I think we only had 1 PLO that didn't end up submitting the experience survey. So you're going to see them as the no response in each of these. We asked, do you hope to continue working in civil legal aid? 14 of the 20 said yes. 4 were undecided. Only 1 said no, and then 1 no response. We asked them for some demographic data. So 13 of the 20 were in the 25 to 34 age range, and then 3 each in 35 to 44 and 3 in 45 to 54. So we appreciated that there was some diversity and spread in the ages of the provisionally licensed lawyers. Similarly, in gender identity, it was about an even split between those that identify as female versus male. And then we asked for race and ethnicity data. The reason we asked about demographics is we were curious. One of the reasons was we were curious to see if the executive committee's efforts to encourage a diverse candidate pool as part of the recruitment process, a competitive candidate pool, actually led to certain measures of diversity in the PLLs that ended up being hired. So this is my last slide on this. Unless there are any questions, I'll hand it to whoever comes next.
Any questions or comments? Oh, Catherine.
This, like every other report, has been, I think, just really interesting. So I, again, want to just add your appreciation. I noticed at the beginning, I thought there were some priority areas that maybe were in the statute. It's like way back at the beginning when you were doing that.
It was the COVID and rural.
So I have to go back,
And
but it's here.
Yeah. COVID, natural disaster, or rural legal aid. And I guess I'm interested in sort of like, I saw the areas people had provided assistance in, but I didn't really see anything that talked about the priority areas. And I guess just my observation, like, I think, there were services in far north rural areas, but kind of the center of the state, which is highly rural, Central Valley, Eastern Sierra, all of that area didn't have anyone. So it's just interesting to see like how successful were we meeting the stated priorities.
I think that was that I think that's a great question. Yeah, I don't have an answer to that, but I will flag that like we were relieved to see, for example, that Legal Services of Northern California applied, because had they not, I think Northern California could have looked really gray too. There's a few parts of the state where there's kind of a one big provider. As patients would know, CCLS for Central California is one of them. CRLA Inc. also serves Central California. But if they choose not to apply for some of these competitive grants, we often find ourselves looking at big swaths of the state, yeah, where there's not going to be as many services. And sometimes we can see that on the front end.
And I'll just say that I can't remember whether we had an application that we didn't fund. I don't think that was the case, because from my recollection, I think we funded almost every, if not every, application that came through for the PLL. But
I just don't remember if we applied or not, but that most of that big gray patch in the middle is us, except for Madera County, which is served by CRLA.
Do you do Inyo and Mono County too, or?
No, it's just the 6 Central Valley counties.
Yeah, I don't know who does the eastern side.
Maybe that's CRLA. I'm not positive. But
maybe it's who'd one?
CRLA.
Yeah, I don't
Could
know.
it be? I don't know. I'm not recalling.
And I do think like for the COVID kind of disaster stuff, clearly like the percentage of things that were housing fall squarely within that. So it was really on the other, maybe emergency services, which would also fall under COVID if we define that more broadly. Anyway, thanks for the good presentation.
Yeah, and I know CRLA at the time, and I see that they did actually get a grant. I know at the time, maybe still today, they have a model. Of course, I'm not the best person to describe this, but they have a model where I think each of their field offices has some autonomy and like does their own hiring. So it could be that their PLL grantee got put at a particular like field office, and then that's why that particular PLL didn't get to help serve some of these counties that are gray.
Maybe they were in Ontario. That'd be great.
Yeah, there you go.
Great. Any other questions or comments on this one?
Really fabulous.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the patience in get it before you're able to report this out to us. So thank you for actually giving us the details on this, and very exciting, because now we have, of course, our legal aid leaders fellowship, and to the extent that there's lessons, sort of what Catherine was flagging, or other, lessons that we can learn from that program that we can continue to use in the other fellowship, it would be really great. All right, now we're going to talk about, we're going to have an update on our 5-year strategic plan. And so
our consultants are here. Kim, would you mind promoting Cassandra and Eric?
Yes, so I will turn it over to Cassandra, excuse me. So bad about that. And Eric.
And Kim, could you make Eric a panelist so he can share her screen? I believe he has a PowerPoint.
Hi, everybody.
Good to see everybody again. Hi. I wish we were in person again.
Cassandra, Eric, there are a couple commissioners that weren't able to attend the strategic planning. If you don't mind introducing yourself.
Sure. I'm going to turn the volume up a little bit. Okay. So I'm Cassandra Pai. I am president of Lucas Public Affairs. We are a strategic communications and public affairs firm based in Sacramento. While strategic planning isn't necessarily our core competency, we do a lot of this work, and we've begun to do a lot of this work for state agencies, just to partly because it's something we like to do, and partly because it gives us an opportunity to strengthen relationships both in the Capitol and around the state. So I appreciate the opportunity to do this work with you. We LPA conducted and supported the full bar on the board of trustees a couple of years ago on its strategic planning, and got, we believe, to a really, really good place for their 5-year planning. And so we've been asked to try to support this work as well. I am joined by my trusted colleague, who I will let introduce himself. I don't know if he's in sunny San Diego or not, but he's in San Diego.
It is sunny today. I'm Eric Saldivar. I'm an account supervisor with Lucas Public Affairs. I've been with the firm for a little over 4 years now, supporting a lot of different projects across government agencies and corporations, but really excited to work with you all on putting together this strategic plan.
And we should also just say thank you to Erica, to Juwan, the staff, and to the working group that's been helping us as we sort of make our way through this process. For those of you who didn't get to see us last month, or I think it was last month, the way I like to describe this process is we sort of start with this much information and input, and we sort of try to narrow it down to about this, and then start to put it in order and help you just think through your work and how you want to do it and how you want to prioritize it. And again, I will thank all of you who were with us in person. All of you were very, very gracious, both with your time as well as with your ideas and input. It was really creative. It was really thoughtful, and it's gotten us to a good place. I think the other thing I'll say before I have Eric get moving with the slides is that now that we've started the process of gathering data, both qualitative and quantitative, we're learning even a little bit more. We're starting to hear from your stakeholders, and we're getting some feedback that I think is also going to be really helpful and informative. And we're going to take what we heard from you and marry that with what we're hearing from your stakeholders and customers, if you will, and start to turn that into a conversation about how we want to plot this work going forward. So we are, we're better than a third of the way through the process. We're not quite halfway there. So what I hope you will do, and just hearing this update from us, is bear with us and know that this is not a done deal. We want to hear from as many of you and as from many of your stakeholders as possible to help inform and be sure this is really a robust process. So again, this is a status report, if you will, not even close to final. Let's go to the slides, Eric. Next slide, sorry. So quickly, I think most of you know this, but as a reminder, you hired us late last year to help with this process. And I think we were introduced at your November meeting. We went immediately into fielding a survey of commissioners and staff to get some feedback. Got some great feedback, which we shared with commissioners at our strategic planning session Q1. We've had ongoing meetings with the working group. We have got a survey of about 100 grantees that's underway. I think as of the middle of last week, Eric, we were at about 65 responses there. It may be a little bit higher by now. And I can tell you, because I am leading them myself, of the 15 in-depth interviews, we've held 2 so far, and both have had some common themes, but both have been very different. And I'm already hearing, what I think was some really good feedback and some ideas to potentially go into the strategic discussion. So those are underway, and that's why I say, we're just about midway. In that process, though, because one of I'll say one of the more popular ideas that came forth in our working group conversation, as well as in the planning workshop, is to develop a mission statement, and I'll come back to that. And then we've started the framework of proposed strategies for the plan. But again, these are not final. Consider these drafts until we get ourselves through the rest of these interviews and hear from these grantees in the surveys. And so what's coming up next is we'll do a handful more working group meetings and start to put something final on paper, and that'll take us into a document that we'll prepare for this group to review, critique, and finalize.
Sandra, can I just add one thing? With the 15 in-depth interviews, some of them are groupings, because as you all know, we have 110 grantees. So I suggested some groupings for Cassandra, like There was a Northern California grouping of between 3 and 5 programs. There was a Southern California, there was rural, there was small. So we're actually, Cassandra's and her team are going to be able to talk to like not just 15 grant, half of them, I would say, within those half, there was like 3 or 4. So the pool is actually much larger than just 15 interviews.
And the 2 I've had so far, Dawn, I'm glad you said that, because the 2 I've had so far have been individuals. But they've been really, really good and fruitful conversations, and both from sort of, 2 different places in the food chain. So you're right. There are going to be some great opportunities for us to share with you some feedback, both from individuals as well as in group settings. So I'm looking forward to those. So that'll take place probably over, the next month. I think, Eric, we're planning to try to be through with all of that process by the 2nd or 3rd week in April is what we're aiming for. Let me just pause and just ask any other questions since I'm on this slide. Any other questions, particularly for
Catherine has her
those?
hand up. Cassandra.
I can't.
I did
see
get a little
you.
confused, and I think, Dawn, what you were saying is that all of the grantees, of which I think there's actually 110, right, were invited, and there were no.
Sorry. No, we didn't conduct. Not all of them were. We did a representative. So I can't remember the breakdown now, but I want to say like of the 15 stakeholders, like half of them were like our individual stakeholders, right? Like we interviewed at LAC, the Judicial Council, and maybe there might be 2 people from the Judicial Council, right? Like Melanie and Laura. But then for the legal aid representative, I think we saved, I can't remember, Cassandra, like 7 interviews, but those 7 interviews were like groupings, right? So there was like a Bay Area cohort of 3 or 5 programs. There was rural. We want a cross section of like certain categories, but we didn't interview 100. We didn't interview 110. That's why that's why we sent out the survey, because we knew we could not interview all of them. So the survey was a mechanism to get everybody's input.
Exactly.
So I'm sorry, just so I'm clear, like, so how many legal aid programs are having an in-depth interview then? Like, what is that number?
Do you have that number, Cassandra or Eric?
I don't have that
believe it's
number.
5 groups of 4 to 5 each.
So about 20.
Say that again, Eric.
Yeah, 5 groups of about 4 to 5 each.
So about 16 to 20 programs, Catherine, I think, by my math.
And the last thing I'll say about the quantitative survey is there's a short list of questions, no surprise there, because we want to sort of have a pretty condensed set of responses. But we do have there's an open-ended question on the survey. So if there's anything to really tease up that we haven't thought about, that's what we use that larger survey for. And this is a process we've used, countless times. It seems to do a good job of capturing what we need to capture. But we pulled the list that we used to develop these, both individual as well as group interviews, came, from staff and from the working group. And so we definitely followed their lead there. We didn't go off on our own and do that without some guidance, Catherine. So thank you for that question. Anything else? Okay, let's go to the next slide. So as I mentioned, I still remember the part of the conversation where we started when we were in person, where we kind of got very quickly to a place where we said we ought to have a mission statement that sort of encapsulates what it is that we do. Because if we got that to guide us, so to speak, we can hold ourselves up against that mission as we judge our work, and also as we think about what we want to do going forward in terms of a strategy. And so we took a look at the commission's purpose statement first, and then came up with what you will see here. Very much draft, but also something that we shared with the working group and got some feedback on. And I will start, actually, if I could, with my favorite chair, Erica. Just give us, a few of your thoughts, just your high-level thoughts on where we got to with this.
Sure. So, we really wanted the, mission statement, and I appreciated the work that Cassandra and her team and the working group did on this. And I think this mission statement ultimately reflects kind of the discussion that we had back in January, which is that we really want to have as our mission this issue of, closing the justice gap, increasing, access to legal services. And I think that's well stated. And that, I think, it should be our guiding light whenever we're making our decisions about the kind of steps that we take. And then, related to that, of course, is the purpose. And I think, the way it is stated, I think, does a good job of encompassing both what we currently do, in our grant programs, but also the fact that, we potentially have the role to, use that role as a major grant organization to more generally advocate for greater access. So, I hope that, I'm looking forward to hearing what the feedback is on it, but I did think it was a very useful way of encapsulating what it is that we're trying to do and kind of that narrowing process. And and just to confirm, Cassandra, this is still also in draft form, or is this?
It would not be my place to finalize it for sure. It's up to all of you, but I would say, yes, draft. That would be my first answer. My second answer would be, certainly open to feedback, but my third response would be, I'd still like to have the opportunity to get through the interviews and get through the surveys to be sure that nothing else is teased up, that we need to be sure that's a part of the work, or that, because, part of this is, we want something simple, we want something clear, but we also want something aspirational. And it could be that in these conversations, we hear one or two other things that, that both your customer base, so to speak, as well as stakeholders, sort of desire you to do. So yes, the short answer, Erica, is this is a, while I would never want to try to write a mission statement or a paragraph by committee, I think generally speaking, what has happened, at least my experience, is we may tweak a word here and there, but for the most part, we'll get sort of collective, some collective agreement around what this looks and sounds like. So I can't see hands raised. At least I don't think I can. If anybody has any other feedback, that'd be awesome. Go ahead, Erica. I saw you take your mic off.
No, I was only unmuting to be ready to help with hand raising and stuff. I don't see any hands raised, but I do encourage commissioners to give their thoughts on this. And, whether you like it, love it, hate it, think it have feedback, good or bad. We want this to be something that the commission is generally in favor of.
And the only other thing I'll add is that, and we heard this pretty clearly. Some of the rationale for putting this in writing is to clarify the commission's role vis-a-vis that of the state bar. And that'll help with reputation, that'll help with clarifying roles and responsibilities, and again, what we aspire to. So that's the last thing I'll say about that. Let's go to the next slide. Okay. So again, I want to treat these as drafts at the moment, but based on what we heard, based on, as those of you were there, came through, we worked in smaller groups and in some breakout sessions to cover some of these issues. And again, we just tried to condense and put some order around them. And then I think we'll hold them up against what we see then hear in these conversations over the next 3 or 4 weeks and in the survey. But priority one is a work already in progress, and that's to develop a mission statement that defines and guides the commission's work. Priority two, and this was an extremely robust discussion, I think you will all agree, formalize and clarify functions and roles for commission members and staff. And what I like about the order is, first there's the mission, And so now that we've got that as our North Star, what's the function and roles look like, you know, with a little more clarity is what we heard from all of you for the commission members as well as for staff. What does that look like? And this is the piece where I will call out the bullet points. I mean, again, we don't spend a ton of time on tactics, at least at this moment, but you know, what we think we heard is that you wanted to create a working group to develop a proposed framework and an implementation plan to really start to formalize those functions and roles. And that most of this, again, this is what we heard, is about increasing efficiencies probably, as well as just the overall effectiveness of the commission. Both really good strategic priorities, both feel like they're reasonable and rational and workable. Let's go to the next slide. Priority 3, establish a recurring series of collaborative discussions with philanthropic organizations to collect input and share feedback and identify best practices and opportunities to advance the commission's mission. And this is this notion that came out, I'm sure many of you will remember, about the commission becoming sort of a convener of these conversations. Now, some of what I believe I heard is that we certainly don't want to reinvent the wheel, but there is a sense that there is not a space or a place where these kinds of conversations are taking place. And so this seems to be, at least from the perspective of those who were in the room with us some weeks ago, you know, certainly something that should be a strategic priority. And that, no question, diverse voices around that table, you know, is critical. And then 4th, explore new avenues for the commission to enhance its impact on closing the justice gap for underserved and low-income Californians. And the sub-bullet here is just to determine what role the commission should establish and play in the advocacy space. And then always this notion of finding ways to increase resources and impact and enhance impact by diversifying sources of funding, et cetera. I'll tell you really quickly, and I'll get to you, patients. One of the calls I had, and we say that we won't share, so I will leave this person's name out of it, but had a really interesting conversation with one of the interviewees this week about how philanthropy is changing a little bit and being a little more creative about getting dollars into those and resources into the hands of those that really need it. And I don't want to take this too far. The way he put it was with as few strings attached as possible, because that's sort of the trend in philanthropy now, recognizing that this is a state entity, these are state dollars, taxpayers, laws, rules, all those things matter. But I just thought it made me think that as we take a look at exploring new ways for the commission to really enhance its impact, we're probably going to hear from many of your stakeholders, in particular grantees, on some new ways to do that. So I think that's an exciting opportunity. And I thought I'd just raise that in light of the conversation I had this week. Go ahead, please, patients. You had your hand up.
So a couple of things. I'm going to start with bullet point 2. It is development work. I mean, this looks to me like development work. And, you know, if some big philanthropy says, we want to augment the dollars that come to the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission with, you know, $7 billion in endowment, or yay for them. Okay, that's great. But the process of going out and digging around in the philanthropic ecosphere for dollars, and then the personnel, the processes, to me, it looks and feels like mission creep. We were created to administer dollars that come through us from the state bar, from lawyers' trust accounts, and then a variety of other dollars have been consigned to our care to accept applications and and work with grantees, as we've talked about at length today, to help them do what they've got to do to use the money responsibly and all of that. But becoming an organization that is all of a sudden ourselves dialing for dollars, that really troubles me, and it puts us in competition with our grantees, which also really troubles me. So I don't know how that might happen, and I see Jonathan's got his hand up, and he's gonna know way more about this than me. But as a former ED with who still has post-traumatic stress from having tried to raise money, I don't recommend it, and definitely would require additional. It's just too much to ask the staff that's now to do that. So that's one thing. The other, I'm not sure what this means. I mean, what I guess we'll find that out. I makes perfect sense to me for us to advocate for our grantees. Ultimately, they're doing the advocacy on behalf of the clients. I don't know if we have a role. So anyway, I trust you, Cassandra, that this is just the starting point for conversations. And so now I've just laid down a couple markers. I look forward to having those conversations.
I'm glad you said it, because it helps me to reinforce to all of you that this is literally the starting point. We start with mission, and now I'm going to break my own rule and just give you, one bit of personal feedback. For me, with the mission, the second priority of really formalizing and clarifying functions for the commission members and for staff is probably the most important thing so far. I mean, there will be others that come, but for me, get that right, and then patience and others, I guarantee you, sort of the other pieces will fall into place, and some may fall off, some may fall in, but I would say trust the process to do a little bit of that sorting. That's why I'm very much calling it a draft, and I appreciate you also calling it out that way, Patience, but thank you for your feedback. Go ahead. Erica, do you want to do you're chairing. I'm not trying to chair your meeting. So you call on who you want to call on first.
Yeah. Let me let other folks chat. But I do want to have a comment. But I also, people hear from me a lot. So let me go ahead, Jonathan, and then we'll go Judge Seligman and then Catherine.
Thank you, Erica. So yeah, I understand Patient's perspective, but maybe if the language in the second bullet was modified slightly, and also if we didn't look at it as being so very literal, because one of the things that I think about is the fact that many people don't know who we are. Many lawyers don't know who we are. And one of the things that we talked about during the strategic planning meeting was having a better sense of what others do in our field, what others do in terms of grant making, and having them to understand what we do. So when I think about identifying opportunities, I'm less inclined to think of it as a development approach, because I've been a fundraiser and a funder, but more so engaging other funders to share the work that we're doing, and they can share what they're doing, so that converges, so that the government side of what we do converges with the foundation side of what the foundation funders and the private and family foundations are doing. So that might be a way to look at it, as opposed to actually thinking of us as commissioners going out to diversify the funding streams and find other sources of support. So maybe that's what the individuals who wrote this was thinking of, and that's how I see part of this.
And Jonathan, thank you for that, because the other thing I would say, again, this ties back to, for me, priority number 3. This in conducting this convening, we might accomplish exactly what you described, getting a better sense of who's doing what, where there's synergies. That also is what enhance means to me, not necessarily taking on something new. So thank you for that. I see, go ahead, Erica, because I can see hands now.
Okay, yeah. Judge Seligman, did you want to go next?
Yeah.
Hi, Judge.
How you doing? How you doing?
Good.
I feel a little responsible for this one, because I think it was some of my comments that led to it. And one of the things that I pointed out was that there is an important educational function. The foundations have traditionally been nervous about funding legal work one way or the other. And that we have an important role. I think I also gave the example. My wife, who is in philanthropy, has had the same challenge of going out to foundations and talking about funding legal services. And what her organization with others have been doing is convening, this on immigration issues, convening groups of larger philanthropic organizations to educate them about the gaps and the needs to get it. By no means would I ever suggest that we should be fundraising. That's not our role. But I think we're strategically placed to understand what the justice gap is, to explain what funding can do. Some of the reports we showed today indicate the value added that comes from it. So I think there's a role for us to play, but it's not a funding role. It's an educational role.
Okay, I made a note of that too. And we will, again, we're gonna have to, this goes to spelling some things out to make sure we say what we really mean. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Catherine?
Catherine.
Sorry, Cassandra, did you have more to say? I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay.
Oh, Catherine, yeah.
Catherine, you're still muted. Sorry.
I know, I'm trying to solve it. I just forgot.
No, you're
I
fine.
Be quiet. I guess two things. One is, in some ways, I viewed the discussion around priority 3 to be about increasing the commission's visibility and being able to share the outcomes. And those presentations were very powerful and the information was fabulous. And so I wonder, in some ways, as opposed to focusing on one segment, philanthropic organizations, we don't instead talk about increasing the visibility and the outcomes that are achieved by our grantees, and then identify a variety of different people we would want to talk to, which might also include, by way of example, like other state agencies that have funding available, that kind of thing. So I guess I'm just thinking about it more broadly than a sole focus on that. And then my second comment is way back to the mission statement. And
Before you go to your second one, can I ask you a question?
Sure, yeah.
Is it the word philanthropic that's troubling you in this one?
Well, it says establish a series of collaborative discussions with philanthropic organizations to collect input and share feedback. That seems like a piece of a strategy to me. I think the broader thing we're trying to achieve is kind of what Judge Sullivan said, which is we're trying to educate people about the commission and the outcomes it achieves to close the justice gap, improve the lives of people with that we serve, etc. The outcomes. And so I would frame it more broadly with maybe philanthropy being a strategy underneath that to inform in the way Judge Seligman described it, but also there's other places we want to do the sort of help them understand what we do and how we might collaborate.
So we haven't gotten to strategy 5, but I will share with you, Eric, if you want to just flip over and then we can come back to this. So 5 is establish process and protocols to increase accountability and transparency around the commission's work. And this was this whole notion of data collection, tracking systems for outcomes. I mean, you see this here, and then this whole piece around enhancing communications. And I will also say, again, just 2 interviews, but both of the interviewees this week talked about the fact that they'd like to know and to hear more about what you do, about the outcomes and some of that data. So that's been very consistent. I appreciate that, Catherine. Okay, we can go back to the other slide.
I guess I just wanted to quickly comment on the vision statement. So I don't disagree that that's part of our work. I'm a little nervous, and it connects to what Patience said, which is we have a very significant statutory responsibility and put into statute about sort of what it is we're supposed to be doing. And I think it could be a mistake not in some ways to reference that, because I think it could be misinterpreted that we're doing something other than what the statute said. So I'm not really sure how to marry it, but I spend my life working in Sacramento often and talking to people about, like around access to justice issues. And I wouldn't want them to get the impression that the Trust Fund Commission was doing work that is different than what we were set up to do. So it's sort of how do we put those together?
Okay, I made a note of that. Thank you. Good to see you again.
Nice to see you.
Dawn, you were gonna.
Oh, yeah. So I was just gonna agree with Jonathan and Judge Sullivan, because I was taking strategic 3 not to be so literal, but I do think it's a little bit more broader. And I know I've seen this, and I didn't give you this comment, Cassandra, until now. Broader than philanthropic organizations. And I agree with Judge Sullivan. It's more of an education piece, and for me personally, it's less of a fundraising piece. Like, we're not going to go out there and try to. I would not suggest this, and I think this may be where patience is. Like, set benchmarks for the staff to then fundraise a certain amount. I don't see that. If there's opportunity, I think we should maximize that. But I think more of it as an educator, as a convener, but not with just philanthropic organizations. And I actually forgot to mention this in my director's report. But we, and Pat can touch on this, but the staff, the State Bar staff, our office is actually going to be collaborating on a joint roundtable with the Access Commission as well as LAC to hold a statewide convening of other state agencies to kind of educate them on the importance of legal aid, with the goal of like expanding funding. But we met with a consultant, Karen Lash, who does this at the national level. She said, don't go out and explicitly say that, but try to bring in these state agencies and see like what we can do for them, how our priorities can overlap with their priorities, with the idea behind that we can then like tout like the importance of legal aid and the work that we've been doing. And you've seen all the data today that we can certainly share. So that's where I see as more. So I think it's not limited to philanthropic organizations, but like to stakeholders that we can collaborate with the idea of enhancing services in California, right? At the end goal, we are a grant making body. I don't think I think I hear a couple of people like mission creep, and I think that is first and foremost. But I think there are other things that we can do, strategies to kind of enhance that with the ultimate kind of vision. And then I do want to Catherine's point about kind of enhancing, I shared this mission statement with the staff, and there were a couple of staff that thought that we maybe should somehow in the mission statement kind of talk a little bit more. I think maybe this is where Catherine's getting at, and I think it does this, but maybe we need to do it more explicitly, kind of our statutory, or like that we are the premier grant making body in California, so that we don't lose sight that we are a grant making entity. I'm trying to tie a couple comments together, but those are my thoughts for now.
Okay. All really good feedback, and this is exactly what this process is meant to do. So I've made some notes. I'm sure Eric has as well. And we will continue to refine this document. I think, again, I will go back to, clarity around mission, which I hear some feedback on, and then this notion of, functions and roles. I think those two are going to be important and sort of lay the groundwork for everything else. Sorry, go ahead, Erica.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to make sure I did have a comment on this. And one thing, I did want to just flag is like, when we did SB 211 a few years ago, the statute really says that the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission is supposed to administer IOLTA accounts, equal access funds, or similar funds or grant monies intended for the support of qualified legal services projects. So while I agree that we shouldn't be going out and doing private fundraising, I do think that this strategic purpose of, diversifying our sources, thinking about different ways in which to accomplish that, reaching out, I think the point about reaching out to other state agencies, all of that, I think is quite consistent with what our statutory requirement and our statutory authority is. And so I just wanted to raise that as a point. I do not anticipate that we will be, and never sort of assumed we would be going out trying to, do like gala dinners and that kind of a thing, and sort of do fundraising, in a private form. But I do think there is an opportunity, and we've seen some of that with the legislature with like the care courts, right? Where there potentially is federal funds that we can be the administration of. And I think to Dwan's point, this idea of maybe, and to Catherine's point, maybe tying it back to that language, that the point of our role is to administer you know, grant monies for the purpose of this. And there is really a potential, like, you know, increase in opportunity there.
Noted. Got it. Okay. Eric, let's just go to the last slide and let folks take one more look at the last one, and we'll get out of their hair. Again, 5 goes around process and protocols to increase accountability and transparency around the commission's work. And I still remember how many hash marks there were around this particular priority, because lots of folks talked about data collection, but also communicating, and heard a couple comments just about from all of you, but also in interviews about raising the profile and visibility of the commission's work. So we seem to be on the same page here and there. Okay.
Patience, did you have a comment?
Yes. With respect to improving data collection and tracking systems, this is a little different than what got circulated with the agenda packet. So there was a clause in there ending the first bullet point that said including tools for grantees outcomes evaluation and reporting. And I think that's really important that we consider that something that we are responsible for doing, we the commission. We require all different kinds of reporting, and there may or may not be software to support it. There may or may not be systems to support it. There may or may not be internal capacity to collect everything that we feel should be collected. As a result, we get inconsistent data because there's inconsistent capacities. I think it's time for us to own that we need data in order to give you more money. And we do not put on you, who are serving clients every day, we do not put on you the additional responsibility of figuring out how the hell to collect this data and report it regularly, accurately, et cetera. So, and this goes back to the very first conversation we had today, the very first issue we discussed, and that is, it is super labor intensive to take like the one grantee who just cannot sort their way out of a paper bag. And so it takes hundreds of hours of staff time when there could be systems that come with the money and, you know, templates and, you know, I don't know, tools. And, you know, I say this with some hesitation, but it does seem like the kind of thing that some consultant could figure out. Obviously with lots of input from the grantees, but, you know, it should be part of our work. So I would like to see that in there, that this is part of us, this is a strategic priority for us to figure out how to make it seamless. That's probably really way more optimistic than is even possible, but make it much easier for grantees to give us the data that we need to go to the legislature with to get them more money.
So I wouldn't disagree, except to say, I think, you know, one, you know, it's certainly worthwhile, and this is not obviously not the time to do it, but to, you know, hear some more robust feedback from your colleagues. But the other thing, I think that if this is an issue and there's a gap or a need, patience, I have a feeling that in the course of these surveys as well as the interviews, that is probably something that will make its way to the surface. So let's keep.
I have to say, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
It didn't occur to me while I was like buried in everything that I had to do as an ED. It did not occur to me, like, what the hell? Why am I, except with respect to Shriver, the Shriver money that, you know, I won't even go into it. It was awful. But, you know, there is not, it is the custom, it is the culture of this world of legal aid, that you get some money from the government, you're very grateful, they want to know all kinds of things from you, you better figure out how to get it to them. And it is not something that I mean, maybe some grantees will say, yeah, and can we have some help with this? But mostly what we did was we leaned on Dwan's staff to help us out when we got stranded. And there's probably a more cost-effective way to do that, and that is by doing this on a system-wide basis. So, okay, be quiet now.
I'm conscientious of time, so I want to let Catherine have her comment. And then
I was just going to ask for a copy of the PowerPoint, so I don't have a copy.
Oh, okay, okay.
People could
we
be sent to us afterwards. That'd be amazing.
Awesome. Cassandra, is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay, great.
No, sorry. Let me ask my boss. Eric, is that okay?
I can't see him, but
I was trying to find my way out of mute, but yes, that is totally fine.
All right. If Eric says it's
Thank
fine,
you.
it's fine.
All right, Dawn, go ahead.
I just want to agree with Patience. I think we did talk at the in-person meeting a lot about this idea of providing support, which we do to grantees, but we might want to be a little bit more strategic about it. And like, this is I think the training piece, and like, not just templates, but that type of thing. And whether what we do in-house, which I think like when it comes to our grant compliance, we could do in-house. But if we can't do it in-house, the things that are like, maybe that's something that we can contract out, or we can support LAC to do that, or maybe a support center is doing that. We don't want to be redundant, but there are things that I think we can provide. We're probably the best people to provide TA. And there are things that maybe are like more higher level systems that we might not be the best, right? Like we can do a training on our compliance, but if it comes to like deeper internal controls issues, I don't know, that might not be us. Maybe it's us, maybe it's not us. But I think we don't have any bullet points on that. And I think that's what Patience are getting at, that support piece.
Yeah, resources, right?
Yeah, resources, support, yeah.
Resources and support. I think those are really
I like systems, templates, and tools. I know that's tactical, but that's what's in my brain. So it makes sense. And again, I tend to think we may hear that, but that's why we ask. We will find out. Yeah. So with that, Eric, I think the last thing to do is to say thank you and have a good weekend, I think. And then I'm looking forward to seeing you all again soon. But thank you for this, and really congratulations on the way the process is going so far. Really great feedback from all of you, and I really appreciate the thoughtfulness. And Erica, thank you and the working group for your feedback and input.
Yes, thank you all. Thank you guys.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Appreciate the update.
Thank you.
Take care.
And Eric, I just want to do a time check because we're almost 4 and we still have our liaison reports.
Yeah, so I'm wondering whether folks can do an extra 5 minutes, and Selena and Laura and Melanie, can you guys get both done in 5? How are we feeling?
Shall I start really fast?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, really quickly, it's not programmatic, but we've got some new leadership at the Judicial Council I wanted to share with you. Shelley Karan is now our Administrative Director. Rob O-Young is Chief Deputy Director. Adam Dorsey is our new Chief Administrative Officer, and Selena Chow is our new Chief Operating Officer. So that's really exciting news for us. As far as our programs, we are working very diligently on CARE Act and getting the courts ready for kicking off cohort 2. The Judicial Council has a toolkit and additional information on our California Courts website if you're interested in looking, www.courts.ca.gov. We have been hosting a number of trainings for judicial officers and court staff. We're holding 2 convenings in April for self-help staff. We're planning to attend the public defender training at the end of April, and the Judicial Council has been collaborating with the public defenders to make sure we understand their roles and working together through some of the legal issues that are coming up. And then another issue that I wanted to let you know is that our staff continues to work on our racial justice toolkit. Please take a moment and go look at our language access services page, because we've got a very robust DEI and racial justice toolkit. And then finally, I just wanted to let you know that the Judicial Council is beginning to work on next year's contracts. We're already templating them out, even though we don't know what the budget will be. We won't even be able to process them probably until August, but we've got you as top priority, and we want to make sure that we get that funding flowing through as just quickly as possible when the books open again. So thanks. Selena.
Yes, Selena, go ahead. And thanks, Melanie. Appreciate the update.
I'll be very fast, just a few reports. LAC has sponsored a bill on mandatory pro bono reporting. So I wanted to let the commission know that there's a huge connection to the, hopefully the increase in access to justice by measuring the pro bono hours. What is measured is of course valued. And we've been working with State Bar staff. That hearing is April 2nd and the Assembly Judiciary Committee. So if folks have questions, ask me later, not on air. But I would love to give you a more thorough update at the next meeting. We also, of course, working with State Bar staff on language on 6033. So we're trying to make sure we get input from the community on that. We also convened a meeting on community justice workers. I know that you may have heard about that from other commissioners, and we are trying to get a better sense of what's happening, not only here in California under existing rules, but what's possible with a waiver. So LAC is doing a lot of work coordinating that. We also are popping up a data clearinghouse very soon on our website. We're working with organizations that just need data for their grant reports. They want to know how many legal aid lawyers are in California, how many clients are served by our community, what's just easy census data. And right now, to use that data for your grant reports, you're going everywhere, you're Googling. And so we're creating a data clearinghouse in partnership with organizations who are in the deep work of pulling that information for their own grants. And when that's launched, I'll let Dwan and Elizabeth know. And the last thing I want to report on is very, very good news. With the financial support of that the commission approved, we were able to hold an executive director retreat this week. So LAC and One Justice worked together to plan a retreat, kind of marrying One Justice's nonprofit governance work and our like representation of the community work. And we had, I think, 27 executive directors for a 3-day retreat in Pomona, California. It was amazing. I'm going to give a written report to Dwan. We're doing evaluations now, but I cannot tell you enough how happy people were to be in community with each other. Everyone was just so grateful for the opportunity. And because of the State Bar's financial support and the Morrison and Forrester Foundation, we were actually able to make it very, very affordable and even offer some travel stipends to those tiny organizations. So thank you. You'll get a full report later, but it was really, really amazing.
Great.
And on that last piece, Selena, maybe at a future commission meeting, you could do maybe a little bit of a full report on that, because we help fund the executive directors retreat the last 2 years, and it's actually not a lot of money that we provide LAC to be able to get this up and running, but it's such a tremendous amount of support, and we hear really positive feedback for these new kind of leaders in the community about it. So
that's great.
We'll save a deeper report for later, but nonprofits, Blue Avocado just had a report today saying that peer connection is especially important for preventing burnout of nonprofit leaders. And this retreat was just the best example of the connections. I heard so many people making connections, sharing cell phone numbers and saying, oh, I'm going to do this. And people referring consultants and coaches. It was really fantastic.
That's awesome. I'm glad that we could help with, or that the State Bar could help with funding that. All right. It's 4 minutes after on a Friday afternoon. Thank you all for staying. Great job today. Thank you so much to staff and to the commission members. Have a great weekend, and look forward to seeing you at the next one. Thank you. Thank you. Great work today.
Thanks for a great meeting. Really informative.
Thank you.